Nick Shirley. Finding financial fraud seems a bit hypocritical considering the fact that the Mormon church was actually fined.
Nick Shirley doesn't care about fraud. Elon Musk got insider information and now he's a trillionaire. That's definitely fraud. Why are we not investigating that? No, what we're doing is we're going on the street and we're harassing brown people.
Another one is Kai Schwemmer.
The white population is globally declining. The acceleration of mass immigration is one major part of it. Because the reason why people in America aren't having kids, there ain't no money for people. But it's conservatives who are constantly voting for make things really hard and expensive. And it makes me wonder, like, are you guys creating the problem to complain about it?
We need the strong Mormon church back in this country. No more of this LGBT stuff.
Guys, it's time to get your spunk back. No more of this gay shit. Call out f***ing mega churches. That, I think, is something that can bring people back to religion. I've been meaning to watch this for a while. It looks interesting. It's from Alyssa Grenfell. The Mormon manosphere is worse than you think. Interesting. Yeah, we found out with the whole bricks and minifigure. This is very off topic, but there was like this huge Mormon, like, I don't know how to call it a cult, but huge atmosphere that seems to really seems to dictate the way that people operate. So let's take a look at this. I'm curious. Anyway, really quick, Small Gut, $2 a month, access to members only Discord, access to my live streams after I go offline. Medium Gut, $5 a month, access to members only videos and some pre-releases. If you're going to do it, which you don't have to, do it on your desktop because it's cheaper. And also we got stickers in the description, nice and easy. And there's also a podcast channel with my wife, Rob and Dan, if you want to take a look at that. Quick plug, dude. Always so quick. All right, so let's look at this video that I think is about why late-term abortions are justifiable. Just kidding. Let's go.
Some of the most famous...
Can you guys hear that? Or am I like completely cucked?
Far-right Mormon influencers are, you guessed it, Mormon men.
What? Well, I don't think that the Mormon women are allowed to like exist or speak, right?
I have a few examples from the headlines for you and then my own explanation, because in my opinion, these people represent a very alarming convergence of gender, religion, and politics. One of the most recent examples of this is a man named Nick Shirley, who has been going viral for his reporting and investigative journalism.
Yeah, that's my favorite. You know, it's funny, not to talk too much about it, but it's so funny because, you know, I had my unfortunate moment a while ago where I got pretty worked up over, like, you know, the MapQuest meme. But what's so funny is if I just kept my shit together, like Nick Shirley, when I had the MapQuest crash out, people don't know this, but Nick Shirley was investigating a company, a business for non-emergency medical transportation fraud, so NEMT fraud, and the company didn't even receive NEMT funding. You know what I mean? So if I had just I just held my shit together, it would have been good. I would have been right, you know. But unfortunately, I lost. That's why you don't lose your cool, even, you know what I mean? Because he was investigating NEMT fraud for a place that didn't even receive NEMT funding, because he doesn't actually investigate anything. He just goes places. He doesn't call. The address was like listed wrong on like one government website. On the actual DOT website, it was listed correctly. On the actual company's website, it was listed correctly. But he doesn't call anybody. He doesn't confirm anything. He just kind of goes around and goes, hey, there's an indiscrepancy here, which a lot of times is just like a paperwork indiscrepancy or something that's already been or being investigated or charged. And he's like, look, see, this is a problem. It's like, yeah, people already know about it, or it's not a problem. And you're just being dumb as fuck on purpose.
In one of his most famous videos,
but I really think that like a lot of the Nick Shirley stuff, it kind of boils down to like what a conspiracy is now, asking questions, like without like, that's it. It's just asking questions, but like it's a weird leading question, if that makes sense. You know, I think I should probably come up with a better example of it, but like they're not actually like, oh, was COVID a conspiracy? And then like not really answering the question, you know, although now I saw that the Trump administration decided to put out some like propaganda that Fauci created COVID, even though he didn't. And if he did, wouldn't this be Trump's fault? Because COVID happened under Trump. So I don't know. It's all just a distraction. It's fucking ridiculous.
He shakes the doors of a daycare while... In one of his most famous videos, he shakes the doors of a daycare while being filmed, while being surrounded by multiple men. And then when they do not let the strange men into the daycare, he declares that that is proof that there's fraud. You may remember that...
Yeah, you know, I will say if somebody... It's just interesting, because if I saw somebody do that, I thought that they'd want to molest the kids. But I guess since Nick Shirley has an intellectual disability and he's conservative, then I guess nobody considers that. But why the fuck would you just let some random guy banging on doors into the facility? And wouldn't it make more sense for Trump to just send auditors to these different facilities rather than ICE agents to go and kill white people on the street? I don't know.
I was a public school teacher for about 8 years, and so I can definitively say that if a group of 4 men with cameras and some of them with face coverings approached a school, it would absolutely trigger a lockdown. Nick Shirley is a lifelong Mormon who recently went on a Mormon mission to Santiago, Chile. His videos have been shared by Elon Musk and
All right, Elon Musk.
JD Vance, and there will be more on him in a bit. Nick Shirley is definitely not some random anomaly. I'm going to be sharing a lot of names and examples of what I'm talking about within today's video.
Well, that makes sense. I think that Mormonism is probably the most cult-like, form of Christianity that exists. So, yeah.
Nick, I think, is a relatively new name on this list of Mormon male political influencers.
Yeah.
If we want to go a little bit further back in history, we can point to Glenn Beck. I literally grew up listening to Glenn Beck within my own devout Mormon household, or maybe it's more accurate to say that I grew up listening to my parents listening to Glenn Beck.
That makes sense.
He is a political commentator on the right, and he has been for over 20 years, and he
Wow, nice career, man. God bless.
also owns his own media company. Glenn Beck converted to the Mormon Church in 1999, and he apparently left Fox News for being too controversial.
That's crazy. Well, I guess Tucker Carlson had the same issue too. Tucker Carlson, people don't know this, and I really don't know why, and I don't know why people like him, but he left Fox News because he was fired because he cost him almost $1 billion because Tucker Carlson admitted that he, like in text messages, that he was pushing like voter fraud disinformation, and he didn't even he knew it was false. That's why he got fired. But like nobody seems to care about that. I find that so strange. It's so bizarre.
To quote from this article, it says, "At long last, we have an answer to the enduring question. Is it possible for someone to be too incendiary, even for the Fox News channel? The answer is yes." Like I said, there are many names I could list here and that I will be listing within this video. Another one is Kai Schwemmer, who I recently saw profiled in the Salt Lake Tribune.
I've never heard of Kai Schwemmer before.
This is another devout Mormon man who recently returned from his mission in Argentina. He has been seen palling around with the likes of Nick Fuentes.
All right, Nick Fuentes.
And also apparently recently accepted in a live stream the title of a Mormon Nick Fuentes.
Wow. I still have no idea who the fuck this guy is. I feel like most of these people are like religious plants that are funded by extreme amounts of money from like big religious organizations that have like billionaires that have unnecessary amounts of money to burn. Like the Koch brothers or something, you know what I mean? And the biggest reason I think that is because conservatives won't stop saying things a bit like that against one, because they literally have way too much money, even though like nobody knows who the fuck they are, and but then also conservatives won't stop. It's like a self-report. They won't stop being like, oh, everything is funded by George Soros, and it's like, okay, very clearly you have your own thing going on where you're funding something. It's a constant self-report,
Kai was recently appointed to be the new political director of the College Republicans of America. The appointment to this position was criticized by other Republicans. So even within the Republican Party, someone like Kai is considered too extreme to
Kai Cenat, baby,
be in this type of a position. And he was appointed to this position despite the many different racist and sexist tweets and posts he's made in his short 23 years of life.
I thought that was supposed to be, that's a qualifier for conservatives to say racist and sexist stuff. I feel like if you don't say that stuff, then how the fuck are people going to know that you hate women and minorities and that you want to take away their rights,
I'll put some examples of those posts.
Women generally, let's see, this person said, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, I haven't suffered enough for you while you post all day behind a screen. Do I have to stay until I'm assassinated like our friend Charlie Kirk? Will that be good enough for you then? Okay, interesting from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who exposed Trump for protecting pedophiles, and that's why she's no longer in the government. All right, so Kai Schwimmer. Women generally do not have what it takes to endure the pressures of a public office, and this is a perfect example. Hey, Marge, literally everyone on the internet with any clout gets death threats. You're not a special case. Meanwhile, this guy, Kai Schwimmer, is a nobody that nobody cares about and gets like no actual attention. Like, yes, it is true. You get death threats when you are a larger content creator, but you're not that. So you don't really understand how it feels.
It's from Kai off to the side here, but obviously these posts
This is probably one of the lighter ones. Definitely is sexist, though.
not enough to disqualify from being
It's not a secret plot. It's clear to see that, intended or not, the white population is globally declining, and we are being terribly threatened by incoming populations. The acceleration of mass immigration is one major part of it. That is so interesting. It's such an interesting thing to see religious conservatives complain about the problems that they cause, right? Because the reason why people in America aren't having kids, and there's a lot of them, of course, but the biggest reason is just that there ain't no money for people. Houses are ridiculously expensive. Everything is ridiculously expensive. It's hard to live. Everybody's stressed out, which makes it harder to find a partner. When your life is easier, it's easier to find somebody and stay with them. Stress is a real tester of a relationship. But relationships and individuals are put under such insane amounts of pressure for their mere existence. And then they're like, well, how come we aren't having more kids? This is why. And then what has to happen is we need to offset a declining population with immigration. That just has to happen. And then immigrants come here and then they perform jobs that other people in America don't want to do. But it's conservatives who are constantly voting for hey, I want billionaires to have a lot of money and make things really hard and expensive. I mean, literally, Trump ran on increasing taxes through tariffs. That is just a tax that we pay. And they're like, yo, this is good. Okay. You guys are creating a problem and complaining about it. And it makes me wonder, are you guys creating the problem to complain about it? Is that what it is? Are you just basically a mega Karen that's creating problems in the United States so you get to complain because you just want to complain? You don't actually want to fix anything? That's what it seems like to me.
being appointed to this position. This type of rhetoric also wasn't enough to disqualify him from appearing in pro-Mormon content, as you can see from this recent collaboration.
Wow, I have no idea who that guy is. To deny that whites are internationally a dying breed and in their own countries a declining majority is more conspiratorial. Who cares? I mean, dude, it's not true, but who cares? Who gives a fuck about, who cares about white people? It's just, we're just people with different color because we're different fucking abilities to exist in the sun. That's literally it. Oh man, our ability, the difficulty to fucking stay outside for too long in the sun is going away. Great. Maybe that's just not a good trait for people to have. Maybe we don't need that trait. Who gives a fuck?
Unsurprisingly, the circle with which these people move in is relatively small. And so here is a photo of Nick Shirley and Kai Schwemmer at an event.
Great. They're just two smiling boys.
As an ex-Mormon myself, I can pretty definitively say that these men are not random irregularities. Mormon doctrine and culture didn't just randomly pop out far right or Republican or right-leaning influencers and commentators. I think what I see in these men, along with all the other examples I'm going to share today,
I think the term men is used a little too heavily there,
is the product of a system. And for me, I will always be more interested in the system that created these types of people, rather than being super invested in the individual themselves, merely because I think it almost gives them too much individual credit. I think more scrutiny needs to be placed at the feet of the culture and specifically at the heart of the system that created them. It's pretty obvious that the Mormon Church did not invent the far-right influencer, but I do think that it gives young Mormon men a particularly useful starter pack for going down this particular path. To name some of the things I'm going to get into today, this includes things like missionary confidence, a deep trust in patriarchal authority, the idea that God's side is your side. This also includes the narrative of persecution, the idea of American exceptionalism, and at its heart, just what masculinity is supposed to be.
Well, for these guys, especially when it comes to the religious aspect of it, masculinity to that, it's such a weird arrangement that a lot of religious conservatives have. And I'm not just talking about Mormons or, anything. I mean, even fucking Muslim people have this. Is the contract that is basically outlined in every single religious text is that the man gets supreme control over their household. And so basically their women and children are slaves to them, like their wives and and then but they have to be huge cum guzzlers for an authoritative system for another man. It's okay, you can have power over these four people, but you have to get systematically destroyed by us all the time. You have to let us do, like, basically dictate your entire life. And that's going to make you feel really small and insecure. So we're going to give you your family that you can beat, and we're not really going to care. That's what it boils down to. It's a very strange contract that goes on that people want.
If you followed my videos for a while, you know that I've talked a lot about trad wives. I've talked about my experience in the church growing up.
You know, it's interesting.
As a girl and a woman. I've talked about secret lives of Mormon wives. But this is the other side of the coin, right? This is the male side of what it means to grow up Mormon. And obviously we are all...
That's interesting. I've never seen a I've seen a lot of like the trad wives on TikTok and, you know, YouTube and all this other stuff. Oh, I'm a trad wife, blah, blah, blah. Strangely enough, they're all younger girls, though, that are somehow allowed to work, even though they're supposed to be trad wives. I don't get that. But you never see like older girls do that. Like, how come there's no 40 or 50-year-old trad wives on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or Twitter or anything like that? Why aren't they allowed to speak up? Is it because it's a truly oppressive system that fucking decimates these women and like it makes them feel, you know, like shit? Like they can't speak up? Is it because it's actually, you know, being involved with this in the long term is actually like super oppressive and they're not happy and they would never want to wish a true traditionalism on other people? Because like people don't even understand a trad wife, like a woman staying at home and cooking and cleaning is not like a traditional relationship. It's a more traditional relationship, but that's not what it means to be a trad wife. It doesn't mean like, oh, hey, I stay home and I cook and I clean and I take care of the house, home, kids, and my husband. It's not a trad wife. A trad wife is somebody who's under like authoritarian religious controls, not allowed to speak up. You don't go to the police if your husband beats you. You go to some kind of a church therapy that does absolutely nothing for you. And every single mistake a man makes, whether he fucking molests your daughter or has sex with another woman, is downplayed by the church. And then they'll fucking, you know, just like they send priests all around the country after they molest kids. Like, religious conservatism isn't just like, hey, I have my partner stays at home and takes care of stuff. It comes with an entire set of principles where like women and children are used as like a literal, they're just oppression markers, and men get to feel powerful owning them as long as, you know, somebody who claims to be of God can own those men. It's fucking ridiculous, but it's always interesting to me.
Products of our upbringing, how our parents raised us, the culture we lived in. It's why I think analyzing the system is so important, because at the end of the day, the system that Mormon men are raised in is shockingly different than the system that Mormon women are raised in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
My system as a woman growing up in this religion was all about motherhood, submission, the idea that only men could hold God's power, that I should...
That's crazy.
Covenant before God to obey my husband, that my primary role in life and really
Why is she wearing a garbage bag over her fucking head?
My greatest role would be to be a wife and a mother. However, that track that I was placed on, the system I was raised in, is so different than what Mormon boys and men grow up with that I actually decided to interview lots of different ex-Mormon men for this video, just so that I felt like I could get a better grasp on what it meant to be raised in this religion as a boy. I'm going to be including a lot of what they shared within this video. One, for example, said that every single Sunday, that when they would have Sunday school, that their entire lesson in Sunday school was basically dissecting a recent Glenn Beck episode.
What? That's crazy.
He said it was every lesson for the entire lesson. And I can easily say that as a Mormon girl, I never heard like political talk at church. I'll say that some of these ex-Mormon men said, you can use my name. Some said, please just keep it anonymous. One person I know, his name is Tony. He wrote...
Whoa, there's a Tony in the Mormon church? I didn't think that Italian people were fucking Mormons.
Put up a response to some of my questions. So I'm going to read a portion of what Tony wrote. I'll say that from everything Tony told me, I think he grew up in a very devout Mormon household. He said, growing up, I always knew we were Republican and conservative. This was made clear to me in many ways, and my dad was proud to proclaim it. I was raised to believe that our way of life was the only right way.
Whoa. I mean, I guess that's how everybody's raised, except one is a little more cultish, you know?
Example, it was made clear to me that anyone who wasn't Mormon, straight, white, and in a two-parent household was problematic or at least deserving of pity. I'll be layering in more of their perspectives and stories within this video, but I think the most interesting through line of all of the conversations I had was that for them growing up in the church, that republicanism was completely intertwined with God. I think.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess that makes sense. The Republican is a party of conservative values. It's so interesting, though, like what it's interesting because like the Democratic Party is still like fairly religious, but it's like more of a progressive religious expression, if that makes sense.
I think the other reason I wanted to conduct these interviews is that I just don't organically get this content, and I never really have in my whole life. I wasn't raised as a Mormon male, and so I didn't get it in childhood, and then I left the church, so I'm not getting it as an adult either. I think I am in many ways the exact polar opposite of the target audience of this type of content.
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, I don't think you're really supposed to allowed to exist. You know, you're a woman. You're just supposed to stay quiet, I guess, in the Mormon household. Trust that you're going to find a man who's going to be able to, that has interest in, like, you know, representing you in a way where they treat you as an equal, you know? Like, what a tough thing. That's a tough thing. Oh, yeah, he'll be nice to me, you know?
I'm a woman. I'm an atheist, I'm politically on the left, and so I feel like I wanted to interview some people who maybe have a little bit more familiarity with this so that they can give me more perspective. That being said, after researching for this video and looking into these people's lives, I fear my algorithm is ruined forever, so I think I really took one for the team here. Now, before I fully dissect this system I've been talking about, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, drop a comment if you've seen any of this type of media across your feed. I think it's very interesting to learn about people not just who left religion, but maybe also who changed political views as they became an adult. Because obviously we were all raised in the culture we were raised in. We all are susceptible to the messages we receive as kids from our parents, from school, from media. But then I think that in adulthood, it seems like there's this diverging path where some people double down and become even more dogmatic than maybe even how they were raised.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. You learn your entire life is completely organized around like a religious system, and then I think for a lot of people they have an anchor bias, and so when you propose like facts or logic to them, they get really worked up about it because it goes against their worldview and it upsets them. It's distressing for them.
And then there's another path where people deconstruct and question and critically think and have a different conclusion. And so if you're somebody who either left religion or...
Well, religion isn't really for critical thinking people. It's a sad thing to say, but it is not for critically thinking people. You can be somebody who's more religious and critically think, but those two things are completely opposed to each other. I mean, what is religion supposed to be? Hey, listen, here's a book. It has all the answers to everything. If anything opposes those answers, it is bad and it's wrong. And you need to just follow this, like with God's word. People, you know, look at the story of Adam and Eve. What is the story of Adam and Eve? It's the story of just mindlessly listening to somebody who is God or represents God. What's the story? Two people who have effectively an intellectual disability. They don't know right from wrong, are put in a garden. God lets a snake in that tempts them. Their only rule, don't eat a fucking apple. They eat the apple. They don't know any better. But they don't really know why they shouldn't eat the apple. And then they eat it and God says, guess what? You're no longer immortal and you go fuck yourself. That's the story of Adam and Eve. It's the story of you don't have to understand why, but you need to listen to what I say. That is it. That is the first fucking story. That is like the first moral story in the Bible. And that's what it is. You're supposed to put your trust into God. Even when people weaponize the Bible and do things to be oppressive to women or children or to gay people or to trans people or to the poor, despite the fact that Jesus said that a rich person, there's a higher chance of threading a literal camel through the eye of a needle than a rich person going to heaven. It's all used, you know, to oppress certain groups of people and then like advocate for the rich. They can't think critically because they're being taught not to. That's the whole point of it. They're not being taught to think critically. They're being taught to just listen to authority figures. You know, people will complain that are conservatives that they think that school was just designed to make you a good worker bee. That's what religion was designed for, at least the way that religion is expressed in the past.
left your political persuasion of origin, drop a comment because I do think these stories are pretty fascinating. I'll also say that what I'm sharing today is, as per usual, my perspective. So I do have data I'll point to, Reddit threads I'll point to, but at the end of the day, I am giving commentary on culture. I'm not out here calling myself a reporter or an investigative journalist.
Oh, like Nick Shirley does? Yeah, true.
These observations are my opinions, and when I have data or facts, I will cite them, and I'll also link them below so that you can go read through and find out for yourself. And I do think that that is the intellectually honest thing for me to do. I don't think that having an opinion is wrong. I think that it's when you present that opinion as fact that it becomes very morally dubious. And that's why I feel like I take a lot of issue with Nick Shirley using a word like investigative journalist. Nick Shirley has done social media stunts where he, for example, paid Hispanic men $20 to hold pro-Biden signs outside of the White House in an obvious ploy to support Trump. To read from this article.
Well, that's how it starts. And they're just completely shameless. Like, there's a guy named Joey Salads. His entire thing was he paid black people to go attack a car that said it was like a pro-Trump car or something, so that he could be like, look, black people are disgusting and bad. That's what conservatives do. And then they say everybody else actually are the ones doing that. So it's crazy.
It says, one late afternoon in mid-May, half a dozen Hispanic day laborers were paid $20 each to parade in front of the White House on camera, holding signs with slogans like, I love Biden and I need work permit for my family. I feel like I should...
Even if this is true, like, how crazy is that? Yeah, I want a work permit so I can work a job. Oh, fuck these guys. Is that so interesting?
I don't even have to name this, but paying people to do something and then calling it organic news is dishonest.
It doesn't matter that Nick Shirley lied about this. It doesn't. Like, conservatives don't care. They don't care about what's real and what's fake. They just care about being hateful. That is the message of hatefulness. That's it. Nick Shirley gives them a reason to feel hatred. Oh, this is probably real. These are the same people that believe every story on Facebook and Twitter. They're not serious people. They're hateful. They've never been serious. They're always hateful. That's what everything has been from the start. That's why when you see people like, and I hate to say it, when Charlie Kirk is assassinated, nobody cared. Conservatives didn't care. They pretended to care. Even Trump couldn't keep up the facade. He's like, yeah, when he was asked about it, what did he say? Oh, yeah, my ballroom's coming in real night. Oh, okay. They don't care. They literally don't care. It's not about like what you're actually, it just doesn't matter. It's not about the facts of what's going on. It's about making them feel good feelings wise.
Nick also recently posted this quote. It says, the truth has no defense against a fool determined to believe a lie, which
there's an irony there, huh?
Is honestly pretty hilarious for a Mormon to post. That's a Mark Twain quote. Which is also hilarious because Mark Twain famously had a lot to say about Mormons. Nick's crusade against finding financial fraud also seems a bit hypocritical considering the fact that the Mormon Church, a church that he belongs to, was actually fined for concealing their finances.
Well, this is the thing again. Nick Shirley doesn't care about actual fraud. Nick Shirley didn't go to Texas to uncover the billions of dollars of healthcare fraud that's going on over there. There's fraud going on everywhere. You want to know why? COVID fucked things up pretty bad. Like, COVID made things difficult. So there's a lot of fraud. A lot of people took advantage of the system. It's bad. It's wrong. It needs to be changed. But that's what it comes down to. But he doesn't care about fraud. Like, ask why not a single conservative says anything about the fact that Donald Trump made $3 billion in his first 9 months of office. Like, I would like to hear their description for that. They don't care. And the way that he did it is that he just opened up cryptocurrency. That's it. He's like, I'm going to do a cryptocurrency. The top 25 donors get to have a one-on-one with me, and they can dictate the laws, and they can help dictate. Like, they can sit down and get like special favors. That's what it is. I mean, Qatar gave him a bunch of money, so did Saudi Arabia. He's hum-guzzling those countries. Elon Musk literally was able to get insider information on how our government runs through Doge. Doge saved us no money. It actually cost us money because the stuff that they cut ended up having to go back in. That's why the screwworm epidemic is happening, because we cut funding for doing stuff like that because it seemed stupid to deal with that problem by carpet bombing, like Central America, with infertile or sterile male screwworms. Because it was a huge problem. That's been like probably the best cost-effective thing we've ever done in the United States. But Elon Musk got insider information, and now he's a trillionaire. That's definitely fraud. Why are we not investigating that? No, what we're doing is we're going on the street and we're harassing like a bunch of fucking brown people. When it comes to fraud that we already knew was fraudulent, like the government was already investigating it. If Trump actually cared about the fraud, he'd be like, hey guys, I'm going to send out more auditors to these different states. Not just fucking Minnesota, also Texas, Florida, all these other places too that have... They don't care about fraud. Nick Shirley doesn't care about fraud. He is a fraudster himself, and he has the IQ of a fucking fish. He's a literal moron. That's why people like him. He's got the Twilight effect. You know, like, oh, I can insert myself into the main character of the Kristen Stewart. She's a very nice looking person. She's very plain. So young girls read that. Oh my God, she's so plain. I could be that. Nick Shirley is the plain guy. He's the guy going around investigating, doing. He's not doing anything. He doesn't call a single business before he shows up. It's all bullshit. He literally doesn't actually do investigative research. He doesn't call any businesses. He doesn't try to do anything. He just shows up and starts fucking like rambling like a fucking idiot.
I think having this like crusade against fraud, but then only investigating the fraud in Democrat-led states, but not, for example, the fraud in his own religion, feels like a little convenient to me. And I did find it notable, if not unsurprising, that the Deseret News did a whole article about Nick Shirley, and it's a very positively written piece. And I think whether it's the Deseret News writing about Nick or both of them appearing on pro-Mormon content, it's pretty clear that what these two people are, whether it's Kai Schwemmer or Nick Shirley, that they are basically getting the Mormon stamp of approval, even though I find a lot of their tactics to just be like pure propaganda, sexist, racist, hateful, bigotry.
Yeah, well, it's because racism and sexism is low IQ behavior. When you're a racist and sexist person, not the fun kind where you just make some jokes or say GG after a game with 6 letters, but like real racism where you actually hate different colored people is low IQ behavior. Because like a more intelligent person can realize like when you're not doing well, it's your own fault. But these unintelligent conservatives, it's like when I'm not doing well, it's a brown person or a woman's fault. If women just weren't in the workforce, if that black guy that's more intelligent than me just wasn't able to take that job. That's what it comes down to. And we know that it's linked to IQ because these are the people who support killing education. The Department of Education is gone. The conservatives did that. And they make up some like nonsense. They're like, oh, we're doing it because they're just putting propaganda in the schools. It's not propaganda. It's anti-propaganda. Getting an education from a school, it's anti-religious propaganda. And they don't like that. It's not the right kind of propaganda for them. They don't want people to have critical thinking skills. They want people to be religiously enthralled. And it hurts their control. That's what it comes from. So we know that these people are like anti-intellectual, and that racism and sexism is literal anti-intellectual fucking behavior.
But they still got that.
He also does undisclosed polymarket edge throat.
Mormon stamp of approval. I think what's also interesting about the rise of someone like a Nick Shirley is that within the Mormon church, there is a kind of culture war that's being played out right now. Historically, the Mormon church has had some of the most conservative members of any religion in America.
That makes sense.
But within the Mormon church, there is a faction that is moving left, especially within the last 10 to 20 years. To read from this article, it says, Republicans and Republican-leaning individuals represent about 73% of Mormons. So 73% are Republican or Republican-leaning, and then 23% of the church is Democrat or Democrat-leaning members. It does note, and this is the part that I find interesting, that these overall numbers can hide significant generational shifts. And this is where I think the gender
well, it makes sense that younger people would generally sway to be more progressive, right?
Element of this story is so interesting because we have people who are obviously leaving the church. So that's one group of people who leave the church. And then we have people who stay in the church, but still are politically left, which is like the minority, right? So you may be wondering, which demographic is more likely to either leave the church or to stay in the church, but be on the political left? And the
women?
Answer to that question is women on both counts. Women at this point are more likely to leave the church.
Well, that's why these different like institutions want to ban women from being able to like vote because they're more left leaning and they want to have all the power. Which makes sense. Like, why wouldn't, if you're like a Mormon or religious man, why wouldn't you want to ban women from being able to vote? Like, Mormonism says if you're a man, all religion, really, if you're a man, you just have special magical man powers. You get to be the dominator of a whole class of women. Slaves. Women are slaves to all religions. It's a fact. Sorry. And your children, too. They're slaves. Right? So why wouldn't you be like, yeah, we should take the right to vote away? I want to be able to have supreme power. I want my DEI. That is what, religious extremism is. It is DEI for whatever group of men belong to that society. In America, it's white men. That's all religion is DEI for white men in America.
And even for the women who stay in the church, they are more likely to be on the political left. To go back to the article, it says, this generation gap is exacerbated.
And that's why there aren't like major changes to religion, just so that you're aware. Because for one, people will just opt out of religion. They'll be like, okay, well, this is obviously oppressive the way that this is being expressed, so I'm going to opt out of it. But also it's the men who want to maintain it because they get to have special privileges over their wife and children and whatnot. But if more people stayed in religion, they'd be able to shift it. We could have a new Messiah, a new this, a new that, right? It's all a social construct to an extent anyway, right? Maybe there is somebody speaking, God's word is speaking to people, but they just happen to not be religious, or they, that's how they express. So they leave instead of being like, you know what? I think God said change this. They're not trying to be revolutionaries within religion. They're trying to be revolutionaries within the rest of the world, through politically. And so now there's that divide where religion used to be very, entwined with politics, and it still is, but it's that's changing every day. You don't have to be part of a church to necessarily be a politician, although you kind of do to an extent. But the fuck?
By a gender gap, with younger Latter-day Saint women far less likely to identify with conservative politics. For the first time in history, we have also crossed a threshold with more Latter-day Saint women leaving the faith than men. And so when I'm kind of observing this cultural shift within the church, I do think seeing this emergence of more far-right men online, far-right Mormon men online, I do think it represents a kind of hardening that is happening within that demographic in the church. Like I said, no matter how you were raised, you can either double down or you can question. It's not like those are the only options, but those are the buckets I'm naming here. And I think when you look at the Mormon church and ask yourself, who does this benefit more, men or women? Who does this work for more, men or women? In my opinion, I think that men are staying and men are doubling down because this religion is built for them. This is a recent post from the...
Yeah, all religion is built for men. That's the whole point of all religion. It's all built for men, yeah.
The official LDS church account, and it's basically highlighting a man who's talking about how his wife is going to become a doctor, and he's still basically finding his path and viewing his current role to be supporting his wife in her career. Oh my God. You wouldn't think that that would have caused a firestorm on the Mormon internet, but I do think that because the official church account is posting and highlighting and elevating a story like this, people had a lot to say about it. Here's one example of a comment on this page. It says, if there's no right way to build a family, then there's no wrong way either. This
sure. Yeah, kind of. It's kind of the case. Yeah, okay.
Message directly contradicts the family proclamation and highlights the growing need for the first presidency to clean house in the marketing department. I don't blame the leaders. I blame whatever 20-year-old woke intern posted this. Tell us how you really feel.
Damn. God forbid you try to elevate your own wife, huh? It's crazy.
And honestly, I'm not...
Which is interesting because you've always been taught that marriage is a unity between two people. That's at least how I was taught. And so you're both now a collective that can express yourselves very productively in the world. Now you're both two sides of the same coin. But apparently for a lot of these men, that's not what it is. It's just about finding a woman to do a bunch of stuff for you and being a supporting structure as you don't support them back. So very interesting.
Surprised that this type of rhetoric or idea coming from the church has caused a lot of strong feelings because a lot of women had career aspirations, but growing up in the Mormon church were messaged that the best and really only thing they should do with their life is to become a wife and a mother. And I'll put more comments off to the side here, but it definitely, I think, can feel like whiplash to grow up in one version of the church, which is a more conservative version of the church, and then to see the church, some Mormon leaders have said, hey, if you have your wife working outside of the home, I'm paraphrasing here, but I'll put the real quote here. If your wife is working outside of the home, you should do whatever it takes, whatever it takes for her to be able to quit her job and be a stay-at-home mom with the kids. This person quotes Ezra.
I mean, that's nice. That would be nice if it was actually expressed in like a nice way. But again, it's really about some kind of like authoritative control. So
Taft Benson from 1981, previously more conservative version of the church, the seeds of divorce are often sown and the problems of children begin when mother works outside the home. So yeah, I can understand feeling like a large amount of dissonance growing up with leaders saying things like this. And then
well, what I find funny is like you hear there's something always quoted about how like women that have a guy that makes less than them, they don't like them as much. Like they won't respect you if you don't make as much as a woman. You're not going to respect you. And I think that there's a level of truth to like obviously women want to have a guy who can, pay for everything. But I think that also part of it's that if a man doesn't make as much as their partner, then they just feel massively insecure about it, like pathetically insecure to a point where it is a drain on a relationship. Because nobody wants to be with somebody that's constantly like fucking, oh, woe is me, But that basically is, that's effectively the energy that you're bringing when you're massively insecure about it. I mean, I think a lot of women are distracted to a guy who wants to do better for themselves, even if they're not doing as well, but if you're constantly insecure and you're expressing that unproductively, because you could be insecure and you can express that productively in some capacity. I genuinely think that that's productive shame for yourself. But if you're manifesting it in unproductively, then like that's where you're gonna have a problem.
Suddenly, we have this like happy-go-lucky post from the church where the woman gets to be, and it's like, wow, look, she's being a pediatric doctor. Like that's so amazing. And to see a woman's career be celebrated, seemingly almost like suddenly overnight, where this has just not been the history or the type of ideology that the church has shared for most of its history. I'll link that original post from Facebook down below, but if you noticed in that first comment I read, it's referencing the Family Proclamation. That's a document I grew up with. We had it on our wall. We would read it in Young Women's. A lot of the tasks that you can find in Personal Progress revolve around highlighting a woman's role in the Family Proclamation to the world. Here's the quote from the proclamation, but it essentially says that men should be the providers, the financial provider. They should bring home the bacon, and the women are primarily responsible for the nurture and care of the children.
That's so interesting, because I do think that like men, I like the idea of being a primary provider. You know what I mean? Like I like that. I think that there's a good way to express that, without it being oppressive. But one of the fucked up things is that like women, like when they say like women are expected to be the nurturer, effectively the provider of the emotional upbringing, like men just don't have that expectation set onto them in any traditional relationship. Like a good father, quote unquote, is just a guy who goes to work and comes home. He doesn't have to really do anything for their kid, according to any historical religious expression, really. At least that hasn't ever been really passed on. So you get to just kind of be an absent father in the home. And it's like, oh, you're a good dad. You made some money. It's like, oh, kids require a lot more. Working a job is much easier than raising the kids. Obviously, when the kids get older, things get easier. But, it's just kind of true.
This is such a common document that I didn't even plan for this. I just have this, I had this down in my bookcase, but this is the proclamation. I mean, we had it printed so that it would be a good size that I would be able to put it in my scripture so that I could reference it regularly.
That's so nice.
Some people,
I wouldn't be able to read it. I'm fucking blind.
Would even memorize this. To grow up having this like really hit home constantly for both men and women, that you have gender roles are real and they are ordained by God, to suddenly have the church kind of seeming to like switch it up. I do think that's good for progress, but I do think it's going to create some backlash by the people who were raised to believe that these gender roles were basically doctrine ordained of God. Now,
yeah, and then also, again, if you're somebody who is the beneficiary of those rules, which are usually men, and when it comes to religion, you're going to be less likely to question it. Usually you only start questioning things when you're not feeling too good about something, when it negatively impacts you. So obviously the guys are going to have more of an issue with it.
Now, a final piece of data for you to consider as we are thinking through this culture war that is both like a generational culture war, but also a gender culture war. This is some data compiled by YouGov, and I'm going to focus on this chart. And basically, as you can see, that basically Mormons are the second most conservative religious group in the country.
Who the fuck is the evangelical? Okay, gotcha.
But even though they are super conservative, of all of those religious groups, they moved the furthest to the left politically in the last 20 years.
Interesting. Oh, that's good, I suppose. At least there's progress, right?
This is like a ripping apart, right? Because we have like very conservative.
So it's also possible that like they're doing the Overton window where they feel like they have to move more to the left to be more appealing, but they don't necessarily want to. You know what I mean?
But then there's this faction within this conservative religion that is pulling it the most to the left. In fact, if you look at this graph, you can see all these other religions represented, whether it's they have Black Protestant, Jewish, white Catholic, white evangelical. All of the ones I just named, those religious groups have just become more and more Republican over time. And really only Mormons and atheists of all of the things on that list have become more Democratic over time. This graph to me is the Mormon culture war in a nutshell. This graph is proof that the church is struggling to know where to go. It's proof that the Mormon leadership is not inspired by God. They're not, it's like they're being cast about on the wind. Of all the people I interviewed, only one of them was a Democrat when they were Mormon. And he basically said that he felt like when he learned about a man named Harry Reid, who was a Mormon that was a Democrat, that finally he felt like he had permission to be a Democrat while still being an active member of the Mormon church. And I think this graph
Well, I guess that's a good thing.
represents too that it's not like every single Mormon man is a far right Republican, is like a political extremist. I think it actually shows that there is a lot of tension even within this larger group. I think that even though there is this kind of dissonance within the Mormon religion, I do think, though, that there's enough of a through line of far-right political thinkers and commentators and now influencers that it has basically become an archetype of a type of person who gets popped out by this religion. When similar patterns emerge again and again, it's worth asking.
Well, I think it's important to know that like time and time again, we see right-wing religious figures get propped up unnecessarily, like without any talent. Like Nick Shirley is one of them getting propped up. I'm pretty sure his parents actually got like they ended up owing like $50,000 for some other fraud that they committed. You have the tenant media thing paying far-right conservatives tremendous amounts of money to push Russian propaganda. There's constant like massive infrastructures to give uninspiring, worthless conservatives money to prop them up, and that's part of the reason why they get propped up, because they just have money that they shouldn't have just to express values that are really just beneficial to people that have a lot of money. That's really what it comes down to. The people with a lot of money, they spend a lot of money to try to platform people to push some dumbass idea, and they'll attack from all sides. Like someone like Nick Shirley resonates a lot with incredibly unintelligent people, but there are a lot of incredibly unintelligent people. So they resonate like really well with this guy. You know, they feel like they're living through him. These are the same people who also struggle to talk, and instead of going to school and getting a better education and working through your stutter, they want to cut that. They want to like bring you down to their level. They don't want to rise themselves up to a level of something that's like worth something. They want to bring you down to their level. You know, that's what it is. That's literally all it is.
Why is this pattern happening over and over again? But also, what types of thinking is this system rewarding? And so as we progress, just keep in mind, just like you can see on the graph, like the far-right movement within Mormonism is criticized often by Mormons themselves. Similarly to how even Republicans didn't like that Kai Schwemmer was appointed to this position, I think it just shows that even within a larger social group, there are people who are saying like, well, I think, yes, maybe we agree on all these things, but I don't like the way you're going about it. And even though the Mormon church...
Well, that's a normal thought now. Like a lot of conservatives who voted for Trump kind of think that like, oh, I don't like that he says all these bad things. But they still justify like the disgusting shit. And like that's really what it comes down to. And I find it so interesting because like I was with my mother and my babshi the other day, and they were complaining about how they feel like young people manners are gone now. And I think that there's a mixture of two different things. I think one of those things is that what is considered rude to older people is not to young people. Like if you walked up to it'll always be older people that'll walk up to you if you have a baby and be like, oh my God, so pretty, and try to touch the baby. And if you're like, no, please don't touch my baby, that's rude to them. Well, that's not really rude. That's setting a strong boundary. Don't touch my fucking kid, right? Or even if you're like, oh, you lost weight, you look really good. If you said like, oh, please don't comment on my weight, I think that's appropriate, because what you're saying to them is like, oh, you were a fat, disgusting piece of shit when you were overweight. You know what I mean? So, there's some boundaries that just are set like, hey, okay, I don't really like that. And even if you don't say them rudely, they're still going to take offense to it. And I think that's one thing, is that like boundaries are shifting, and setting boundaries is considered rude to like other people with different conventions. I mean, you give them a little bit of credit for that. But I think another thing is that like, it's your parents, it's your mother, it's your father who voted for Trump, who's constantly saying disgusting shit. That's like, where do manners go? And like, we don't have to get into the specifics of like Trump being a horrific pedophile or anything like that, or like actively telling Romania to lift the travel ban so that Andrew Tate can leave, and he's a sex trafficking rapist, but that had a 15-year-old girlfriend when he was in his I believe late 20s, early 30s. But just like he just says constantly rude, nasty shit all the time. And it's like, that's where like young people are going to see that, and they're going to be like, oh, okay, this is acceptable. So you guys complain that manners have gone away as you vote for some president that just doesn't have any manners. He's a rude, nasty piece of shit bitch. And you guys are like, oh my God, he's so funny. Okay, well, you get funny or nice manners. I don't know what to tell you. You guys voted for bad manners. So stop virtue signaling that you care that people's manners have gone away, because you obviously don't actually care. Or you wouldn't have voted that way if it mattered to you.
Through the Deseret News, put their little stamp of approval on Nick Shirley. I'll also highlight in this video other instances where there was somebody saying, as a Mormon man, I believe this, that, or the other, and the church came out and made a statement against them. So it is a little bit of a complicated conversation, because we have the organization versus the culture, we have gender, we have politics, we have religion, we have God. So I do feel like there are so many warring identities here that this is kind of like a bird's eye view of this, and there's a lot of like break off groups within these different identities that aren't perfectly encapsulated in what I'm talking about. And I think because the Mormon church is ultimately just truly doesn't have any strong leadership, they're all just like old men in their 90s, it does mean that the war for the soul of these young Mormon men often does come down to social media influencers. I mean, a lot of the men I interviewed for this video, they talked about listening to Jordan Peterson.
It's fucking Leo Vaughn, a useful idiot, dude. Holy shit.
Talked about Joe Rogan, the kind of larger manosphere, and like.
Oh yeah, man. If I know somebody likes Joe Rogan at this point, it's pretty much like I know that you are morbidly unintelligent. Unfortunately. That's just pretty much it.
Looking to those voices to figure out like what is it to be a man? What is masculinity? I've seen Reddit threads on the Faithful LDS subreddit of people, of like Mormon leaders, finding out that the young Mormon men are listening to Andrew Tate, for example. And
that's crazy. The masculinity conversation is so funny to me sometimes, because like there's always like, what does it mean to be masculine? And a lot of these guys, well, they're wondering, and I get it. I've never really questioned my own masculinity personally, but but like, what's not masculinity to these guys is helping your fucking wife out around the goddamn house, dude. I don't understand that. I don't understand why masculinity is never like making your wife happy or comfortable. I don't know. There's so many people, like I know people who watch like Joe Rogan unironically, and like they literally are fucking lazy and worthless. They don't want to help around the house. They don't want to do anything. Like when they end up having kids, their wife is basically going to raise another kid by themselves. They're going to be an absent father in the household. It's fucking insane.
And you have like these faithful Mormon leaders like at the congregational level who are like, wow, these young men in my congregation really like Andrew Tate, and I don't know what to do about it. You can obviously find a lot of conversation online, not just that's Mormon related, that's like about about the manosphere, about red pill content, and kind of like the male loneliness epidemic and all of these things. And I think that just like that conversation is kind of overtaking young men across America, I think that is even more strongly distilled in Mormon young men specifically.
Well, the male loneliness epidemic, people like... a lot of people say it's because society isn't valuing men the way that it should. And that's really not the case, man. It's really not the case. The male loneliness epidemic comes from the fact that, I mean, listen, first of all, the society doesn't work for anybody right now. Let's be fucking real. I mean, it's tough in general to be middle class and lower class, of course. But it comes from the fucking, like, I hate to be this guy. It comes from the computer, you know? It comes from the internet. Is where it comes from. People are online all the time and they're just rotting and they're not going outside and they're not bored anymore. And when women were bored, women would be like, oh, all right, I'll let that ugly guy take me out on a date. When men were bored, they were more likely to go out and take women on dates and go and do a hobby where you would find women. Where do you think you find women? It's not really on Tinder. It's hobbies, things that you do locally. I don't know how many guys have met a girl on a video game. I did. Luckily that was a long time ago. It's not my wife. But like, you just don't do anything. So you're sitting at home. You're kind of like, you're bored, but you're occupied. So you're not truly bored, and you're sitting there and you're in a bunch of male spaces online. And then you get upset when a woman wants to exist in that space. Oh, you want to be a woman in my video game, and you start having a fucking meltdown online. You know what I mean? Then you start watching Asmongold, and now you're like, okay, I don't want to leave any of my comfortable space, but I want a girlfriend, which doesn't make any sense. But then if girls want to come into the gaming space, I'm going to shame them for the virtue of their existence. None of these things make any sense together. That's a huge reason why, there's a male loneliness epidemic, and it's also gay to be supportive of your fucking, your friend. Your friend's a guy, and he's struggling. Well, he's fucking gay. All right, sorry, you're fucking gay, and it's funny when you struggle, hey, I'm going to make a joke about an immutable characteristic that you're always going to have, you're always going to be insecure about. And that's just male behavior. You know what I mean? It's fucking crazy.
Specifically. And this is probably made even worse by the fact that young Mormon women are even more feminist than probably has ever existed in the Mormon church. And
Makes
so
sense.
It's like the gender war compiles with the political war, compiles on top of the religious war. And it means, that's why I say it feels like the church is kind of being ripped apart at the seams, because there's not enough cohesion for this to be like a strongly united group. I'm about to get into that list of things, but as a final tie-in to this conversation about the culture war, I do think something that actually Charlie Kirk said, he said this just, in the minutes before he was killed in Utah by a young man with a history in the Mormon church. He actually Charlie Kirk actually.
I think that's important to keep in mind, that like being somebody who is an extremist in an extremist church leaves you vulnerable to being an extremist even in the other direction. I think that there are certain types of people who resonate with different extremist organizations, and to manifest in a different way. And he was extremist towards the left because he was raised to be an extremist towards the right, and everything is very extreme to these extremist people. They're not really more grounded and rooted in reality.
Gave a quote speaking to the culture war in the church, which I thought was interesting because, it's not like Charlie Kirk is Mormon. I think his commentary about the soul of the church, my words, not his, I'll read the quote in a second. I do think that gives some more proof and evidence to what I'm talking about, that even this outsider can see that the church is at war with itself and is chastising the members of the church for becoming too soft or too on the left. I did have a lot of people at the time ask me to make a video about Charlie Kirk, Utah. I've been to Utah Valley University many times in my life. And so even seeing this crazy event happen in a place that I've spent time was wild, but I did make a separate Patreon video fully reacting to that. This video was already too long and I feel like I had too much to cover, and it's difficult when I'm researching for these things not to go too far off the beaten path and meander a bit. And so if you want to see my separate video talking about Charlie Kirk and the Utah connection, that is already posted on Patreon and linked below. But anyways, as Charlie Kirk was speaking before he was killed, he he, like I said, did speak to the culture war happening in the Mormon church. So here is that clip.
I think it's time for Mormons. You got to get your mojo back. No more of this LGBT stuff. We need the strong Mormon church back in this country.
This is so stupid.
We have the white shirt and tie crowd right there.
I'm going to read the line.
I just think that's just so silly. Guys, it's time to get your spunk back. No more of this gay shit. Like, what the fuck does that mean? It's so weird. I find it interesting that, like, if your entire institution is threatened by the existence of gay people being happy, or anybody being happy that's engaging with consensual adults, I just don't know how to, like, obviously you're wrong and you know that you're wrong and you're fucking pathetic. That's pretty much it. It reminds me of those guys. Have you ever seen like the videos where like somebody will like kind of like say something a little bit saucy to a gay guy or to a straight guy? It'd be like, "Oh, you're handsome," and then the guy gets super offended. "Oh, don't talk to me like that." You know that you're a closeted homosexual and you're incredibly insecure, and that your masculinity is threatened by the bare bones minimum of anything. Like, it shouldn't be devastating for you guys to say like, "Oh, you look handsome." Just be like, "Oh, thanks, bro," or whatever, or just like ignore them and go on about your day. But they get so worked up, they feel like they need to say something. They get so angry about it. They're so insecure, and that's what that is. You know, hey, we got to get our spunk back. No more gay shit. Oh, what about like making your church actually worth anything? What about, like, you know what I mean? Like, if I was somebody that was like super religious and I was like, damn, but religion's being threatened. There's like less people wanting to engage with religion, which is true. You know, probably because they're so hateful to gay people. But like, what would you do about that? I'd sit here and I think I'd say, you know what? I think I would call out fucking mega churches for taking advantage of people who think that they have to give their entire life savings in order to go to heaven. That is something I would call out. That, I think, is something that can bring people back to religion. If they focused on calling out bad religious people instead of calling out gay people who just want to be happy, then maybe you'd have some more people. But it's always an obsession. It's an obsession, and they're always obsessed with people that are happy, and they're not obsessed with people who are abusive. They don't care. I mean, like, let's be real. This is the party right now, unfortunately, of justifying pedophilia and fucking rape and abuse of women and children. But they're more obsessed with gay and trans people existing. It's fucking crazy.
Line again from the transcript. I think it's time for Mormons. You got to get your mojo back. No more of this LGBT stuff. Obviously met with a lot of applause, which, so, I mean, even
I think part of the reason they hate gay people so much is like, for them, either they're a closeted homosexual that like hates that part about themselves and they don't want to be considered an outsider in their own community. And then part of it's just like so easy. Like, there's so many things in religion that is like anti-rich, or like you can't eat certain types of meat or wear certain types of silk, that are ignored. They love rich people who do steal resources from poor people. But like, it's easier to just be like, "Oh, I hate gay." That's easy for them. Religion is about what's the easiest thing. And for the men especially, what's really easy is to hate on gay people and tell women that they need to be oppressed by them and that they need to be like second-class citizens in their own country. That's what's easy for them.
that is kind of crazy, because I think from the outside and from my perspective, the church is still very homophobic. And so you might hear that and be like, what is he even talking about? Because the church has a lot of pretty homophobic policies. However, I think if I'm interpreting what he's saying here, for example, the Mormon church in recent years has said things like, well, being gay is not a sin. Acting on being gay is the sin.
I guess that would be considered progressive to some of these people. But Charlie would agree with that.
Which, considering that there used to be like complete witch hunts in the Mormon church at BYU, for example, the person who led those gay witch hunts is now the leader of the Mormon church, President
I glanced over for a second. I'm like, I thought that was Benjamin Netanyahu, dude.
Oaks, where they would do things like go to a gay bar, and then with a police scanner, they would scan the plates of all of the cars to see if any of them were BYU students, which is the Mormon University, so that they could get them in trouble for being at a gay bar.
Crazy, dude. What a world, huh?
They also used to do things like electroshock.
I get what you're trying to say, but just assuming those losers are in the closet doesn't help whatsoever. It's just an assumption you made, much like what you're doing all the time. No, I don't think it's an assumption at all. I think you have to understand something, that like, people aren't a hard read. A lot of people who hate gay people are closeted homosexuals. That's just it. And like, for you don't see it, and I understand that. But like, you can tell. We watched a whole video where there were 3 literal closeted homosexuals talking about how bad it is to be gay, and then 2 of them were talking about how they used to have sex with men. It's easy. It's easy. It's not a hard read. You know, it's not hard to read. There's a lot of, like, Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh are closeted homosexuals. Ben Shapiro, straight. Like, there's an easy read. You can tell who the closeted homosexuals are. And part of that's about how hateful they are. It's very easy. I'm sorry. I mean, you might not be able to see it, and that's perfectly fine for you. This is not a hard read. I mean, like, I'm around gay people all the time. It is such an easy read to tell who's fucking gay as hell. You know? There's such an easy read, you know? It's just, and it's an impossibly easy read. It's actually laughable how easy it is to read. So, you know? Just saying.
Experiments.
Oh, yeah, Nick Fuentes is definitely bisexual. For sure, 100%. 100%.
Where they would try to see if they could turn people straight. There's an article I'll link below as well about that. But obviously, at this point, the Mormon Church is no longer doing things like that to be homophobic, to try to root out or scare away gay members of the church. Another thing I think you could point to of the Mormon Church losing its mojo is now they say, like, well, if you get extra piercings or tattoos, you still...
I doubt that there's people. I'm sure there's people in the closet. I'm just not sure it's all of them. I know. That's why I just said that there's two different groups of them. One group is people who are closeted homosexuals, and the other group of people are the people who it's just easy for them to be like gay bad because they're not gay. I just said that. You just listen to everything I'm saying, okay?
Probably shouldn't, but it's no longer like completely prohibited. They also changed the garments to be more immodest.
Wow.
Now you can wear...
Hold on a second.
Is another thing I think you could point to of the Mormon Church losing its mojo is now they say, like, well, if you get extra piercings or tattoos, you still probably shouldn't, but it's no longer like completely prohibited. They also changed the garments to be more immodest. Now you can wear a thick...
I think that the word garment is gay. Let's be fucking real, guys.
Thicker strapped tank top with the new Mormon garments, whereas previously Mormon leaders, and if you go read through the old handbooks, it says, like, do not ever show your shoulders. The Mormon...
What? Is that real? You're not supposed to show your shoulders? That's fucking gay.
Mormon Church's position on abortion is also that there should be exceptions made in the case of rape and incest.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
And wow, shockingly liberal, I guess. The church has lost its mojo by having that be an exception for where abortion is allowed.
What I find interesting about this, the abortion conversation to me is always just so interesting, because conservatives that are pro-life, they don't care about life. They're not pro-life. They're like pro-birth, right? Like, first and foremost, every single one of these people that stand outside and go like, oh, adopt instead of abort, none of them have adopted before. That's like if I was standing outside of a fucking like a place and saying, guys, you should be eating healthier. Like, okay, great. You're not really living by your truth. So they don't actually care about that. They never adopt. That's number one. Number two, these people are always conservative, and conservatives are always against money for kids. Like, there was an entire conservative movement against children having access to fucking healthy foods in school. They are the ones who want to cut health, different welfare for for poor people, but they want billionaires to have infinite amounts of money. It's laughable. They're not pro-life. You know, these are the same people that we're in super big support of, cutting a tremendous amount of resources for people around the world who were struggling with access to like food and healthcare and damn, I got fucked, and different things like this. So like, they don't actually care. It's all a virtue signal. They don't actually care. And these are the same people that are like, oh, you'll just rise to the top or you'll just die if you don't do particularly well. You know what I mean? They're not the ones that are trying to like have access to people with disabilities either. You know what I mean? Like my wife works for a group home. Conservatives are the one who tries to vote out funding for these group home settings. But you're like, okay, have your kid with Down syndrome, but then we don't want you to have any governmental supports for your kid with Down syndrome. Don't abort ever at any, for any reason at all. But we don't want to help you if you do, or if you have the kid. Fuck you. It's insane. And these are supposed to be people that are very community driven. Why are communities going away? How come the communities are dying? Well, it's because there's no more community. Like, they don't know how to expand their community outside of like themselves and their very immediate family.
And so for a lot of people on the outside of
Yeah, they want to make sure that those rich people have at least one extra yacht.
the Mormon church, the church still looks very oppressive to women. This all-male leadership chart would lead you to believe it's a very conservative religion. And for me, I look at the church and say, wow, there's still a lot of harm and damage being done by this organization. I think someone like a Charlie Kirk is saying, oh, like, look how wokey. It's almost like that same comment that was like,
Charlie wokey, am I right?
like, I blame whatever 20-year-old woke intern posted this. It's clear that the more traditional guard, the more traditional version of Mormons are looking at some of these changes. And while on the outside, for some of us, we're like, wow, at least they...
Yeah, pro-life stillborn, exactly. I mean, it's conservatives that are justifying, you know, our recent unnecessary war in Iran because Israel told us to, or we're fucking bombing kids, you know? So
allow abortion in the case of incest. Apparently, that is just beyond the pale because all abortion should be murder and you should be penalized by the church or, you know, whatever they might say in that circumstance. Now, I wanted to get into the system that I think that the Mormon church has created for so many Mormon men. Here is the list I compiled. I'm going to read through them and then give basically an explanation and then examples for each item on this list. We have missionary work, distrustful patriotism, deep conservative values, masculinity and patriarchy, and of course, the justification of God. So let's start with missionary work, because I think that...
Listen, I'll maintain missionary is the best position, okay? And it's a good amount of work. But it's not too much work, you know what I mean? On top, who wants to be doing that?
That's one of the most clear...
Because then usually girls give out after like 2 seconds and then you're going to have to fucking pump from the bottom anyway. It's inefficient, but it can be good. I'm just saying, dude.
Connections to creating content online. Mormon men are raised to do missionary work, even more so than women. Historically, it's been the viewpoint that it's the duty of a Mormon man to serve a mission. For women, it's like, you know, if you're not married yet, if you really, really want to...
I love the concept of missionary work because I think it's basically just religious colonialism framed as a nice thing. It's soft-speaking hatred. Hey, why don't you go to another country that, you know, we've basically beaten down resource-wise and raped them and stole all their resources. And why don't you go over there and talk about how good God is and make sure that they are now religious. Make sure that they have your religion as well. And do a couple of nice things, but like it pales in comparison to the amount of resources we've robbed from them through, you know, the basically religious exploitation. Like, oh, that's so nice. You're such a good... Yeah, I spent a whole summer in Africa. Wow. Yeah, we're just helping these poor tribes and we're just taking shit from... We took something from them hundreds of years ago, but now we're just giving them some bread. It's pretty good of us. It's like, oh yeah, that's so nice. Like, good job. Like, what a nice thing to do. It's just like a fucking virtue signal. It's just punching someone in the face and then like giving them a cloth afterwards. Like, wow, you're a nice young chap. You're a nice young fella.
You can, but it's not a priesthood duty to go out and go on a mission. As a Mormon missionary, you are working on conversions. You're trying to get people to convert to the Mormon church. This obviously means you talk to everybody. You talk to strangers.
Whoa.
You knock on doors.
I don't like talking to strangers.
You get really good at like a 90-second elevator pitch. This also includes emotional persuasion, memorize talking points, using like your personal testimony to try to convince people of fact. I think all of these skills make it pretty much like a plug and play to become a far-right influencer, to even some of the street interviews conducted by Nick Shirley. He goes to the border, and how does he know perfect Spanish? It's because of his Mormon mission.
He knows perfect Spanish? He doesn't even know perfect English. You have to prove that to me, girl. There's no fucking way. But it does make sense that he learned Spanish when he's young to be able to help be part of the colonization grooming efforts of religious cults. That makes perfect sense to me.
The same thing goes for Kai Schwemmer. I do think the fact that both of them went to South America to save people's souls and to baptize them into the Mormon church, and then they come back and they use the Spanish that they learned to alienate these populations and dehumanize them, now that they're back in the United States, to speak out against immigration. I think that that's pretty horrific. Also keep in mind that Mormon leaders have literally told the followers that they should be posting online, that it's not just that the mission field is your neighbors or your coworkers, it's also that you should be putting your faith online and holding that up as an example to the rest of the people who follow you. And I think coming from Mormon leaders, it does end up feeling like a commandment, I'll put some quotes to the side here, for members to post their faith online. When I was Mormon, we'd have like different things we were told to post, like post this thing for Christmas or use this particular hashtag.
Wow, Christmas.
It's a very orchestrated social media effort. It's not just like, oh, like here's me at church. Some leaders have been as specific as to say like what types of things you should be posting. I do think that Mormon men being raised to have this like missionary work mindset, but then also having this like political ideology, it means that the new mission field is just politics rather than...
Well, yeah, well, just to be clear, I don't think it's the new mission field. Let's be fucking real. It's always been... What the fuck? Okay. It's always been politics. Politics has always been part of the infrastructure. You know, that's why this whole like separation of church and state idea is highly contested by very religious conservatives. They're like, well, actually, back in the day, it was always been a separation of church and state. But they like to be dumb as shit and talk about like the Confederalist papers. Nobody cares. Like they're fucking talking out their ass. It's always been politics is basically the way that we orchestrate our life, and it's always been intertwined. At least for them, they try to forcefully intertwine it. That's why we've never had like a non-Christian fucking president, you know?
Preaching about the Book of Mormon, we're now preaching about Donald Trump, or we're preaching about any other far-right talking points, and it's pretty plug and play. My next point was distrustful patriotism, which I do feel like probably needs to be explained a little bit. Mormons have such an interesting combination of being very patriotic to the country,
they're not,
the United States, but also being very distrustful of government.
So just to be clear, I think it's fine to be distrustful of government. These people, like, this is what we call false patriotism. I need people to understand, and it's religious conservatives in general who exhibit the most false patriotism. What's made America great as a country is literally freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and immigration, bringing the best and the brightest here to be able to do certain jobs and roles. We just saw earlier in this exact same video, the very, very religious Mormons, you know, the extremists, which is what this video is about. These are the people who want only whites in America. They only want white people in America. That is anti-American. They want women to be stripped of their rights. That is anti-American. They want men to be the leaders of the household, which doesn't just mean that they make money. It means that they get to have a complete control over their household and don't go to the police. You go to the church instead. It's so funny is that like religious extremists in America want the same thing that religious, you know, Muslims want in their country. They basically want a conservative or a Christian Sharia law, whatever that fucking means. They want extremism. All extreme religions in all countries, and these are the countries they point at and say that's a shithole. They want the exact same governmental structure, pretty much. They don't want women to be equals. They don't want, you know, the age of consent to be raised. They have no interest in any of these different things. So I understand that like these people are not patriots. Just because you wave an American flag doesn't make you a patriot. You don't actually love the country. You're not actually trying to get through the hard points. There are going to be times where immigration will be a problem. It's not because of immigration. It's just because of where we're at. They don't say that. They want all the non-white people to be out of this country. And they'll soft speak to you and they'll say like, well, no, I think black people are good. It's just I wish that they would live in a different country, but they could be happy, we keep separate but equal. That's what it is. So these people aren't patriots. Just don't let religious conservatives say they're patriotic. They're not patriotic. They hate America. That's all it is. They hate America and what it's become. They want to roll it back. They want to keep all the positives of you know, our immigration and our robust systems, but without having those systems, and instead like taking things away from people and harming people, right? Like again, when it comes to like not having welfare systems, they don't want to get rid of welfare because it's bad for the country. It's objectively good for the country. They want to get rid of it because they hate poor people. They hate poor people. That's literally all it is. So just keep these things in mind.
A common Mormon joke is that like Mormonism is the most American religion because the church was founded by Joseph Smith here in America. We'd even be like, well, you know, Catholics, that's over there in Europe. That's like a European religion, which makes it less worthy of our trust and adoration. I mean, I also grew up thinking that the Catholic Church was the great and abominable church mentioned in the Book of Mormon. I think manifest destiny is also a good word for
Oh, destiny reference.
it, because they view America as like singularly like God's favorite country. I mean, even the idea that Jesus Christ visited the Americas is like a very American exceptionalism.
I've never heard that Jesus Christ visited America. Is that something that they believe? That's fucking preposterous here.
Version of Jesus Christ himself, where he needed to come to the Americas because America specifically is part of God's plan.
I've never heard that before. I wouldn't doubt it that some people believe that, but holy fuck, could you imagine believing that Jesus came to America? That's fucking crazy.
One of the people I interviewed, his name is Justin.
Because if he did, they would have kicked him out immediately. All these Mormons would have kicked Jesus out. Jesus is a brown guy that wore a dress and had long hair. Okay. And his best friends were prostitutes. And he said that rich people were bad. He's never said anything about gay people, but he said rich people are bad constantly. He won't stop talking about it, in fact. Well, it sounds, that is, what is it? What do they say? Diametrically opposed to every single conservative nowadays. That is the opposite of what conservatives believe nowadays. Jesus Christ would be fucking hanged to death if he came to America today. Just to be clear. He'd be fucking killed. He'd be legitimately fucking killed by conservatives. Just to be clear, I think that people should keep that in mind when they talk about these different things. So.
And he grew up believing that being a Democrat was morally wrong. So it's not just that like, oh, they think differently than us. Oh, you know, everybody has different beliefs and blah, blah, blah. It's that being a Democrat was evil, essentially. That Republicans were the party of God and Democrats were the party of Satan. He also said that viewing the Constitution as divinely inspired, that this was like almost like, if I'm putting it in my own words a little bit, but like the Constitution is from God, like this is scripture essentially. And I think maybe in this viewpoint, because the Constitution is divinely inspired, it's not meant to be, there shouldn't be amendments, which if you're not familiar, some of the amendments to the Constitution.
Yeah, women can vote. Yep.
Have outlawed slavery and given women the right to vote.
Yep. Well, again, I hate to be that guy. Very conservative religions, traditional religions, they love slavery. It's not just slavery of other people. They want their own wives and their children to be their slaves. I don't know what else to tell you. They don't want to have, and it's unfortunate for them because they were raised to be disrespectful to women and children. But that's what, and I keep saying children, but like, again, you know, it is children too. They don't want to just like raise their kids. They want to be owners of their kids, and they don't even want to do anything with them. Like a lot of traditional conservatism, it's like, oh, the man goes to work and comes home and he doesn't do anything to help the wife. Oh, he's a good dad. That's what it is. Right? Like, just keep it in mind. You know, like, unfortunately, religion, in the very traditional religions, they do not, you know, they're not trying to teach men to be good fathers. They're just trying to teach men to go and do stuff and come home. That's why a lot of these young men struggle to get partners, because they don't want to do anything for their fucking wife. They don't respect her as an equal.
One thing that Justin said that stood out to me is that he very much took Republican talking points at face value, almost similarly to taking Mormon church talking points at face value, because once you believe that something is ordained by God, whether it's Mormonism or Republicanism, if that's God's party, if that's God's religion, you're not really allowed to question
Yep.
or think outside of the box in any of those things, because you should not question God. That's pretty fundamental to most people's conception of God. Justin told this interesting.
And keep in mind, if you're not allowed to question God, right? God is the parent to the man, and then basically kids and women are the parents, or the siblings, or excuse me, are the children of the man, if that makes sense. So if he's not allowed to question God, you're not allowed to question him. That's the arrangement, the religious arrangement for a lot of very oppressive men who identify with it. That is the point of it, is to be like, okay, I will take it up my ass for a male authoritative figures, as long as my wife and kids have to do the same for me.
Story about when he moved to Seattle, that he met a friend in his ward, and the friend talked about how the friend's parents had voted for Obama.
Whoa, Obama.
And that basically Justin was like, I thought you were Mormon though? Like, almost thinking that you could not, like, it was not even like physically possible in the realm of this reality for a Mormon, an active Mormon, to be a Democrat or to vote for Obama. Now, I've established how Mormons believe America is a godly nation. Mormonism is the most American church. Joseph Smith founded Mormonism here for a reason. And I think what's interesting, now we're going to get into the distrustful part of patriotism, because...
Yeah, it's not real patriotism. I understand what she's saying, but I'm just saying for you guys to understand, because like I grew up a little bit more, I probably am still attitude-wise more conservative than most other people. Because like I associated a conservative attitude with like, oh, I don't fucking care attitude, you know what I mean? But like I love America, like I really do. It's just so hard to right now because of some of the worst people in the world are running it.
As much as Mormons love America, they also have this underlying history where the feds are out to get them.
True, maybe they are. Who knows?
One of the original Mormon foes was the government. In Missouri, there was an extermination order given by the governor back when Joseph Smith was still alive. And even when the people in Utah, the Mormons in Utah, wanted to join the United States, the federal government essentially said that, no, you can't join until you say you're willing to give up polygamy. And so...
Whoa, hard ask, am I right?
Within this patriotism is also this long-standing history of being persecuted and oppressed by the government. And so it creates this strange sense that America is this divine land of God, but can often be ruled by wicked and horrible people. I do think that this ends up aligning very well with far-right politics, because the whole like drain the swamp conversation and QAnon and all.
I love the drain the swamp conversation because the people who want to drain the swamp are the people who are the swamp. Trump is the Epstein guy.
A lot of these other conspiracy theories that say that there's this deep state or there's fraud, like Nick Shirley investigating fraud. This can also extend to this idea that all white males in America are under attack, that like Christianity is under attack, that basically there's all of these structures and institutions and organizations across the country that are run by Satan, essentially,
Ooh.
And are trying to figure out how to destroy real America, which is kind of the ethos behind Make America Great Again. I grew up hearing all these stories about how the government, I mean, it would be like in our religious like Sunday school books, we'd learn about persecution from the government, Hans Mill and things like that. And so I think Mormonism gives you a persecution story even before it gives you a political origin, and then far-right politics gives you an easy villain to plug into that persecution complex. This can also feed into this end times thinking where the good America is under attack, where God's America is under attack. I mean, this is a video I did about why so many Mormons become preppers. One political example of this is...
Well, I think it's a lot of the... I think that some of them maybe just have like a fucking, like maybe a disability, with high anxiety. Or maybe it's just all the information that they're receiving is always high anxiety information about how the world is over. And that they have to prep, even though, guess what? It doesn't really seem over. And if it is, it's a certain president, so... Is
Ezra Taft Benson, which I already read the quote from him, saying that women working outside of the home is like the beginnings of divorce and children having problems. I do secretly think that...
It probably is the beginnings of divorce for them, because, again, they want to have control over their partner. So it's a scary thing.
Benson Boone is named after Ezra Taft Benson, but I've never been able to confirm that suspicion. Ezra Taft Benson was once the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, and then later in life was one of the prophets of the Mormon Church. Ezra Taft Benson in his time was considered very controversial. Here's a quote I found. "The internal threat to the American way of life is in the secret alliance which exists between the more advanced social democrats and the hardcore communist conspiracy." And so whether it's like Nick Shirley or...
Always some kind of communist conspiracy, dude. It's so interesting. Like, what the fuck is communism to these people? Communism to them is anything that communism to religious people, just so that you're aware, is not really communism. Or excuse me, communism to like modern day like MAGA conservatives, because that's basically what we're talking about, is not actual communism, right? Like communism is like the state takes over control of like every institution and structure, and they have full control, and that control can be very easily taken advantage of by people that are in power in the state. True. Sounds just like pure capitalism, except the control is in individual business owners who are able to, get presidents elected and then become, and then after that, they're able to create something called Doge, where they have insider information on everything that's going on in the government, and then they get to reroute contracts towards their businesses, and then they become trillionaires. But okay, but like communism is like full authoritative control from the government. People on the left, the biggest push right now, and it's not even that big of a push on the left right now, is healthcare, is government run healthcare that works in every single other Western country better than our system does. Not perfect, better than our system does. We pay twice as much per person for healthcare in America. Our healthcare is not that much better than other countries. They don't have massively longer waiting times just because they have that type of healthcare. It just doesn't exist that way. They have happier people because they have less anxiety or healthcare anxiety. But like they're trying to sell it to you that like, the existence of healthcare that could be good for everybody and accessible to everybody, and not like completely, cause you to choose between living 10 years and being able to provide for food for your kids. They're trying to sell that as communism because rich healthcare executives want to keep things the way that they are so that they stay rich. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's literally all it is. So I think it's something to keep in mind for people. That like, if you just say like everything is communism, like if you're saying like Mamdani is a communist because he's, reduces crime in his state or his area, his town, whatever town, what the fuck am I saying? In the city. And he's getting the budget under control, that's communism to them because they're afraid that like that type of system can work, so they're just using evil boogeyman words. That's all it is.
Glenn Beck or Ezra Taft Benson, there's this same through line of this conspiracy of something roiling beneath the deep that we have to figure out and find because there's evil lurking in our country and there's secret societies that need to be brought down, which honestly I find hilarious and very ironic because the Mormon Church is a secret society. You have to have a special card that allows you to get into a special building where you will learn special handshakes that will allow you to get into heaven. Ezra Taft Benson also had some kind of crazy prophecies about the apocalypse and about end times. This is a quote from him. "And yet you will face challenges and circumstances, the severity of which has been unparalleled in generations past." So he's speaking to Mormon youth and Mormon people and saying that there's about to be like incredibly severe circumstances. He says, "Today I speak to you about the times in which you live and the quality of faith you will need to survive some of the difficulties yet to be experienced." And in my video last week, I actually talked about in my patriarchal blessing, it said that I would struggle to get the necessities I needed in order to when you think of necessities, that's like food, water, and shelter. But if I was faithful, I would always be able to get the necessities I needed to survive. One more modern example,
as long as you put your faith in God, I guess, yeah,
of this like end times thinking is two brothers named Cliven and Ammon Bundy. I think this article is a good deep dive into their story.
Wonder if they were good at football when they were in high school.
It's titled "Why the Bundy Militia Mixes Mormon Symbolism with Anti-Government Sentiment." These two became famous because they had basically a standoff with federal agents, and they have this long history of anti-government rhetoric and a long history of using the Book of Mormon and religion in general to justify their stances. And I'll say this is an example of a time when there was someone on the very far right that the Mormon Church did come out against and didn't celebrate. So you can find statements from the church basically saying, no, this is not condoned by the Mormon Church.
Well, how long ago did they speak against them? 2016? Things have gotten so much more extreme that like people like this will probably be praised by Mormons nowadays. Let's be fucking real. Things are more extreme than they've been in a very long time under Trump. So,
and we would like to condemn this and say that this does not represent our religion. And so even though Nick Shirley gets the stamp of approval, there are examples of these types of movements that the church says we don't want to be associated with that. If you've seen Under the Banner of Heaven, it covers two brothers, Ron and Dan Lafferty, who, I mean, it's a horrific story, but similarly so, they were devout Mormons, they were mainstream Mormons, and then they kind of combined this same level of anti-government persuasion, end times thinking, and religious justification to carry out some really horrible crimes. The next piece of my system that...
Religion being used to justifying crimes? I've never seen that before. That's fucking crazy.
That Mormon boys and men grow up in that I was going to point to is conservative values. As I already illustrated with the graph, the data about political leanings, Mormons have always been one of the most conservative religious groups in America. This means they have an incredibly strong belief in traditional values, in keeping things the way they've been, and Utah, which is the home base of the Mormon Church, is reliably Republican in every single modern day election. I'll say though that this idea of Mormons being very Republican and very conservative can sometimes feed back into this distrust, this like idea of persecution. Because even though Mormons have always been on the right politically, much of the rest of Republicans don't really like Mormons. Evangelicals especially really dislike Mormons. They like to talk about how Mormons aren't Christian and they don't believe in the Trinity and things like that. And so it's almost like even though Mormons are more conservative, they're a little bit orphaned on that side because
maybe it's like sports fans. Like sports fans, like, oh, I really like sports. They're so cool. But then, like, when you got that guy that's pulling out the stats, it's maybe a little autistic. You're like, okay, I don't like this guy. He's a little bit of a sweat. He's sweating a little too hard. He's putting a little too much energy into this. You know, we're just here for the booze and the impression of women. Tell them they're gay. We're not here for the extreme versions of that, you know? I just want to be able to push my wife on the ground and not get arrested. I don't want her to not work. I want to be able to, I need beer money, dude.
They're not fully accepted into the larger religious republicanism that exists in the country. So this is fueling that same sense of belonging while also being othered or being kept outside of the inner circle. There are a ton of examples of conservative traditional values that I've talked about in in all the videos I have ever made. I've already talked about the proclamation to the family and standing up for very strict gender roles. A more political example of this is Prop 8 in California. This happened in 2008, and essentially the Mormon Church was trying to keep gay marriage from being legalized. To read from this article, it says, Jeff Flint estimates that Mormons made up at least 80% of the early volunteers who went door to door, according to the New York Times. There's that door-to-door action coming in once again, where we see this talent or this skill that Mormons learn from doing missionary work, going door to door, trying to convince people, trying to...
The skill or talent? I guess it's a talent or a skill to harass people and feel okay with it. Like, I would feel bad about going around and fucking harassing people about Mormonism or anything, really. It's just fucking annoying behavior. I wouldn't want people coming to my fucking house asking me for shit either, you know?
To convert people, taking that skill that they've learned in the religion and then applying that in a political realm. A lot of the political donations that went toward trying to keep gay marriage from being legalized in California, a lot of those donations were from Mormons. Another political example of these Mormon conservatives.
All right. Hey, good for them. I guess they got plenty of money then. What the fuck are they complaining about? What the fuck? This is not appropriate, dude. I'm just trying to swim upwards, bro. Is this game made by Mormons? What the fuck? Jesus Christ.
Conservative values is Mike Lee. He is, I think, sometimes more conservative than even the mainstream Mormon church. There's this article which basically shows like Mike Lee is is too far right for where the Mormon Church has landed currently. He probably represents the type of Mormonism I was raised with, and the type of Mormonism that Charlie Kirk is talking about when he says you need to get your mojo back. Mike Lee has championed anti-abortion legislation, anti-LGBT
I will say I'm pretty proud of Charlie Kirk. He hasn't said anything racist in like a year, so God bless him for his change to be more politically left.
Legislation, gun deregulation, religious liberty bills. I mean, he's been in office for a long time, and so he has a very long track record of conservative values. I'm going to show this clip. This is from the Daily Wire, and they actually had Kai Schwemmer on the Daily Wire, and it seems like this is like an event where there's kind of a Q&A. And in it, somebody asks if we should bring back anti-sodomy laws.
I'm pretty sure this guy's like a right-wing plant. I'm pretty sure that's most of the questions from this are like a right-winger and it's just asking the question.
Which is basically saying gay sex is illegal. So that's where we're jumping into the clip, and here's Kai Schwemmer's response.
My grandparents grew up in a time where there were laws against sodomy, there were laws against cross-dressing.
I love this because the person asking the question totally a right-wing plant. I forget who his name is, but I've seen him before. I'm pretty sure all the Daily Wire questions are just like completely vetted. Like they're 100% vetted. Like you can only ask a question if you're like a conservative. Like it's all part of the infrastructure.
Would our country be better off if we had laws against sodomy and laws against cross-dressing today in 2025? Should Christians and conservatives pursue laws against sodomy and cross-dressing?
I think that before we do that, maybe conservatives should enforce the laws against raping women and children. Trump's spiritual advisor got out after, 6 months? He was supposed to serve like 20 years or something for raping a child. Something else had happened. This happened where a conservative decided to give a rapist an Epstein deal, a sweetheart deal, just like, Yeah.
An 8-year-old boy right here in Waco was repeatedly sexually assaulted for nearly 3 years, starting when he was in 3rd grade. His abuser was Adam Hoffman, a well-connected lawyer here in Waco. Hoffman was arrested and charged with a first-degree felony. He should have served 25 years to life in prison for abusing that 8-year-old boy. But instead, he served less than a month in jail because Ken Paxton gave Adam Hoffman an Epstein-style sweetheart deal.
There you go. Wow. Thanks, Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton. I sure hope he's not the Republican Party's nominee for the U.S. Senate. Yeah. So anyway, that's what conservatism is. Even Donald Trump helped, pressured Romania. Like this is a fact. Donald Trump's administration pressured Romania to let Andrew Tate, the rapist guy, to lift his travel ban from Romania. Like that's how fucking deep it all is. So like, oh, what if we got rid of the what if we stopped letting gay people fuck each other in the ass and also wear dresses? Oh, okay. That's a ridiculous thing to say. But why don't you guys start with not raping children? Because there's not a single bit of outrage from conservatives for any of this stuff. They don't care. They don't care that. They don't care that any about it. They don't care that Donald Trump's in the Epstein files. They've been shitting about it for years. Now Trump's in the files like 38,000 times. There's allegations that he threatened to rape and kill little girls. Nobody cares. These guys don't care. So it's always a virtue signal to point to fucking gay people. They don't give a fuck about any of the things that they say. Why don't you guys enforce your fucking shit first? How about you guys enforce the law before you want to make new laws?
I just want to jump in real quick because not a lot of people know.
Oh yeah, and then how many of the people from January 6th that Trump pardoned after using them to fucking attack the Capitol to try to literally overthrow our democracy? How many of them? I think like 50 of them have gone to jail, back to jail for some kind of child predation. Okay, interesting stuff.
It was only less than a decade ago that the state of Utah, the great state of Utah, unfortunately, and it made itself less great by doing so, repealed an existing law which had banned premarital sex. I am not aware of another state that had such a law. But people...
How is that based? What the fuck?
Forget, by the way, that I believe...
I respect the Mormon who says, I will be more puritanical than you. I respect the hell out of that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
and so if you didn't catch that, he's basically saying that it should be illegal to have premarital sex, that it should be against the law to have sex outside of marriage. Wow. Now, I want to compare and contrast that.
I guess it's because they can't find anybody that wants to fuck them.
With this quote, which is also from Kai Schwemmer, same thing. This is
what's so funny is that even if they implemented something that made it like illegal to have sex before marriage, if you're a man who did it, you would be forgiven, and if you're a woman who did it, you'd be arrested and put in jail. That would be how that would work out. because men would get the forgiveness of God, but women are disgusting for allowing themselves to do something so heinous, you know? So I think it's interesting. I think it's something to think about.
That profile I mentioned earlier in the Salt Lake Tribune. In this profile, it says, he stated his opposition to the Islamification of America. I don't want my country to start building billions of mosques.
Billions? Holy moly. Why would you make that many mosques?
He goes on to say, I don't want to start seeing hijabs everywhere I walk in the street. Now,
why? You don't want to see... Well, I mean, me neither. That's a base take. Only because it's summertime. I'm trying to see girls, you know, maybe some hot moms wearing a little bit of skimpier outfits. You know what I mean? You don't want to see you covering yourself up. So the only benefit is it makes the women sweaty, and that's kind of hot. So.
Now, why highlight these two quotes? Because on the one hand, he's saying he's against the Islamification of America. And then on the other hand, he's saying he does want what I think of as the Mormonification of America, which is saying like that we should have a law against premarital sex.
Well, it's basically like, oh no, throw out all the red Kool-Aid. I want blue Kool-Aid. That's all it is. Because it's all the same shit. They want to oppress women in a different way. Like fucking, you know, these Mormons like this specifically, they think it's awesome and base that women are getting oppressed. They just want to oppress them themselves. They don't want to, you know what I mean? Instead of having them in a sheet going outside the house, they don't want them to go outside the house at all. You know?
I think, once again, to use the word hypocritical, the idea that he doesn't want other people's religious extremism, but he's very comfortable with his own religious extremism overcoming America is very telling. What does it tell, Alyssa? I think it shows this deep-seated desire to make conservative values the law of the land. And not just anti-sodomy laws. I mean, if you heard in the quote too, the person asking the question is basically appealing to the idea that our ancestors were great. Our ancestors were doing things the right way. Our grandparents, because they had all these laws that kept people from being evil or morally bankrupt, like being gay or having sex outside of marriage. And they're saying, like, let's legislate that our religion and our religious values become the law of the land. I actually do think that that is a form of religious extremism that is a extreme amount of government overreach. These are also the...
Yeah, but they're fine with government overreach as long as they feel it benefits them. That's pretty much the whole thing there.
The my body, my choice people who didn't want to wear masks and didn't want to have to carry around vaccine cards. And so it's not really about freedom per se. It's about saying, well, I want my thing to be the thing everybody has to abide by. That brings us to our next topic, our next point, which is masculinity and patriarchy. To me, Mormon men are taught a very specific style of masculinity. I think this is
it's the toxic kind. That's silly.
Toxic masculinity.
Hey, I got it. I was right. True.
I think that if your masculinity says that to be a man, you have to have power over someone else, whether it's your wife, whether it's...
Yes, that's exactly what it says for them, unfortunately.
The leadership position. If masculinity only exists if it's dominating something else, then that form of masculinity is a threat to equality. This is the...
Yeah, they're okay with that. Religion is not about having equality. Like every single rights movement for every group has been, what the fuck? It has not been a religious push. I'll just say that. That's all I'll say.
The belief that men are superior to women in the Mormon church, that only men can hold the priesthood, that because they hold the priesthood, only men can be in most of the leadership positions. In this version of masculinity, men should be the decision makers, both in the home.
You know, it's so interesting. Excuse me. It's interesting that, like, Jesus Christ. It's so interesting that men are only allowed to be in the positions of power when it's men who struggle with most of the rules when it comes to like being religious. Like, who are the ones going around and like cheating and doing all this fucking shit? It's always guys, right? You know, so I feel like women would be better spiritual. Like, you know, it would make more sense to me that they would be more of the spiritual people because they'd be able to hold on to it more easily.
And politically and religiously, at every level, a man is the one that should be making decisions. Obviously, you can just look at the top leaders of the Mormon church, which I often show this picture because it's very telling who gets to have power in this religion. And truly, I feel like I've already told
in every religion, right?
So many stories about men dominating women. In my experience growing up in the church, we've seen it in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
I can't skip the cutscene. Are you fucking kidding me?
We saw it in the Ballerina Farms profile. Here's a tweet from Kai Schwemmer. Women generally do not have what it takes to endure the pressures of public office. And this is a perfect example. He's basically mocking.
What's interesting is if you're a woman in public office, you are going to be criticized for being a woman. Like, that's it. Like, if a man makes a mistake in public office, you elect him to president. If a woman makes a mistake, you call her like a stupid bitch whore. It's because she's a woman, blah, 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 blah. That's one of the things that this guy would do, obviously. So it's very interesting what he's saying right now.
In my words, mocking Marjorie Taylor Greene for being upset that she's getting death threats.
Yeah, I'm sure she's getting death threats because she was against Trump's whole, Epstein shit.
Not a special case. I know Nick Shirley recently made a video about getting death threats for being online. And
oh no, that's so sad.
I didn't see Kai Schwemmer chiming in to be like, why are you being so emotional about this? But I think this type of masculinity, it is ideological, and I also think it manifests physically, like in how Mormon men usually look. This means no tattoos, usually rather thin, very clean cut. If you go to the Mormon Church's website and look at expectations for how Mormon missionaries, like men, should dress, that is basically how almost all Mormon male political figures end up looking. It's like they're still following that same Mormon missionary lookbook. I think this is also what makes Mormon men great political and conservative influencers, like online, because I do think they just look the part. Physically, they just look like Republican men. And so that also plays into this same idea that we have the aesthetic match to the ideology. I think there's also an extreme amount of homophobia in this. Justin, when I interviewed him, he told me that he was friends with girls growing up and
whoa, gay!
That he would be called gay for that.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought they would have said that? Who would have thought that they would have just said that he's gay? Not me!
I feel like the idea that being nice to women or being friends with women automatically means you're gay.
Ugh, this is so cringe that you can't skip the cutscene. Every other boss fight you can.
Super Mormon to me. In this video, I talked about what it was like to be a teacher in 9th grade in Utah, and I heard homophobic slurs constantly.
Based?
In other videos, I've talked about how doing things like even using lotion is seen as like being gay.
That's crazy. Especially since whatever they put in the water, I'm telling you, is making my hands all dry. So I've been using more lotion. So
form of self-care is something only women do. And really any form of taking care of yourself, whether it's wearing sunscreen or going to your regular doctor's appointments, can seem somehow like that's like something that's gay or
going to doctor's appointments is gay. It's because mommy's supposed to set my doctor's appointments up, dude. Come on.
Not masculine, because worrying too much about like eating a cheeseburger is something only women do, apparently. I also think part of this masculinity is very much like self-reliance, the idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
Hell yeah.
You shouldn't take any handouts. You should be like ruggedly independent. This is also why I think the idea...
I mean, I think it's okay to have like a mentality that's where like, hey, I don't want to have to take handouts. But it's gross that like like listen, my when my mother was growing up, like she, like her family, you know, they used a bunch of shit. Like they were on welfare, and it's like now these are the same people that want to pull the rug out from other people after they benefited from it.
That the government shouldn't help anyone is very appealing to a lot of Mormon men, because it's like getting help with something is counter to masculinity. I think,
which is so funny because it seems like the Mormon Church literally just gives people help through the means of like unnecessary like funding. Like it's a complete, like Nick Shirley is a complete inauthentic. He's a completely inauthentic person. He's a plant. But like, how did that happen? He got a bunch of money from a bunch of fucking rich people.
That within this masculinity is very much like, I did it for myself, so why can't they? Which, considering the fact that most
But they didn't do it for themselves.
Mormons are just middle class. I mean, even within the Mormon church, it can often be very difficult for even members of the congregation to get help from the church. And when I was a missionary, if someone wanted help from the church, they usually had to be a member. They had to be showing up to church. They had to be paying a 10% tithe. So like to get
10% of their taxes was going to the church on top of that. Oh, wow. I wonder if you just kept that money, if you'd be better off.
help from the church, you have to show that you're giving money to the church, which is very counterintuitive. Even the idea that kids shouldn't get free school lunches, like that they shouldn't have had like loser parents to begin with, I guess is the core of that argument. That is,
it's crazy, dude. Because school lunch is probably one of the best things possible that we could do. Nutrition is so important for people, especially young growing people, that it can be the biggest difference between being smart and not being smart. So this idea that we shouldn't give school lunches to fucking people is just fucking preposterous, dude. It doesn't even make sense. There's no argument against doing it. It's easily like the stupidest fucking shit in the entire world to try to deny school lunches from fucking kids. It makes no fucking sense whatsoever, dude. It's actually just completely fucking brain fucked.
essentially, I think at the root of this is the idea that no one should get a free handout, no one should get a free lunch, no one should just get help. Everyone
Isn't that what religion's supposed to be about? Helping people?
should have to work for anything they might ever get from anyone. I think
people should have to work. They should work, but there are some things that can help people work and be better, move society forward. All right. But these people also, like, they worship billionaires, like, more than they worship God. It's fucking insane.
think with this, like, Mormon man lookbook and masculinity, being white, having white skin is a huge part of this. It is no surprise that all of the men I've been highlighting are white. I've talked about in this video. So there's a very long history of racism against Black people and really against anyone who's not white within the Mormon church. The Book of Mormon literally still to this day has verses that say that dark skin is a curse.
Wow, incredible. Still believing in curses is fucking incredible.
Early leaders said that interracial marriage should be punished by death, and there was a ban on Black members getting the priesthood or going and getting all of the temple privileges until the late 70s. And so I do think that part of the Mormon male Republican look is whiteness. I do think a lot of the church's history and doctrine has been rooted in white supremacy. My friend Tony, who I mentioned at the beginning, he is part Polynesian, which is also part of the Mormon church's conquest. I have a video about that too, why the Mormon church has this history of converting Polynesians specifically. But to read from Tony's...
She's got a lot of videos. I guess it's smart to plug that stuff, you know?
Essay, he said, "I remember every race except white being the target of sharp criticism. We were warned against dating just about every other race, even though we're Polynesian, have a Black uncle, and a Hispanic aunt. And yes, we were frequently warned against dating other Polynesian people without the irony ever being acknowledged."
That's kind of interesting. Well, how? Are the white Mormons that aren't... The white Mormons that aren't supposed to date outside their race supposed to date them? Maybe this was just like this idea to shame these people in a way that makes them like never want to breed, so that they basically just go extinct. Oh, that'd be fucking crazy.
And I'll say for Tony, his mom's side was Polynesian and his dad's side was white. So I think the dad, being the patriarch, the decision maker of the family, also probably was playing a part in how he was raised. And along the same lines, talking about how whiteness is next to religious purity and righteousness, I've flashed this picture on the screen several times. The Mormon church leadership, top Mormon leadership, is currently almost entirely white. Historically, it's been only white. As far as Mormon prophets go, the Mormon prophet is the top of the organization. That's the top leader of the church. And there's only ever been white men in that position. I think that really so many of the Mormon leaders over time that you could point to fit this aesthetic. Even Mitt Romney, I feel like when he was running for president, so much of the commentary about him was talking about his like clean cut Mormon look.
All right.
I also thought it was hilarious.
Hey, I'm clean cut too, dude. I got a circumcision.
Curious that Kai Schwemmer, I saw that he follows clavicular. And I do think that part of masculinity, similar to women and looking beautiful, there is a mirror to that. And there's a way for men to achieve the way men are supposed to look, similarly to how women have to go to great lengths to achieve how a woman is supposed to look. I don't think men usually go under the knife and have surgery and Botox per se, but I do think even going through Kai's Instagram, you can see that he's posting like gym bro pics next to his political statements and political ideology.
Wow, very nice.
On the subject of whiteness specifically, we have this tweet from Kai. It says, "It's not a secret plot. It's clear to see that, intended or not, the white population is globally declining, and we are being terribly treated by the incoming populations."
I wonder if white supremacists are just afraid that like non-white people will treat them the same way that they've historically treated minorities if the population declines. That's what I'm going to assume it is. That it has more to do with that. Because like I think that a lot of these people know, especially the ones that do missionaries, which are basically just like, you know, religious colonization, where they go around and try to like replace the religion of the area. I think that they know that historically white people have fucking decimated other populations and like robbed them of their resources. So I think that that's a big part of it.
The acceleration of mass immigration is one major part of this. And honestly, I couldn't pick a better tweet to kind of wrap up all of these things I'm talking about, where there's like this end times, we're persecuted, we're under attack. There's this idea of like whiteness is being threatened, and that the reason it's bad it's being threatened is, I think if I'm reading into this, like the idea that we should have white people being in leadership, they should be on top. The fear about immigration, the fear about non-white people, brown people. That tweet from Kai is in response to a tweet by Tucker Carlson where he says, "Demographic change is the key to the Democratic Party's political ambitions."
It's just so stupid. It's just a white replacement fear mongering. Again, it's just so funny because when you hear that, what they're saying is like, oh, Democrats want to bring in a bunch of people from other countries, like non-white countries, because they're going to vote Democrat, and that's why they want it. They want to maintain their power. It's like, okay. The problem is that not a single, like every single white person that comes from a white country is also voting Democrat. Like, you think that fucking Swedish people, if they do come here, they're going to be like, oh, I want to vote Republican? Of course not. We're like the only people who, if anything, like fucking, I mean, I would say that like regressive third world countries would be more likely to vote Republican if Republicans weren't racist to them. That's literally it. If Republicans were just like less racist, boom, that would be it. They would be like all over that shit, boy. That's all it would take, but they can't do it. All the oppression of like women and children and LGBTQ people, a lot of people from third world countries would be on par with that, but you know, they're racist. If only they would stop being racist and just sexist and basically pedophile defenders, they'd be able to, you know, get voted in, the people they want to get voted in. So, you know, something to keep in mind, to be able to have a nice demographic change.
And to me, this all just reeks of this like conspiracy theory against men, against straight white men. It's all wrapped up in the same idea that like masculinity is under attack. And like I said at the top of explaining this topic, that's why this type of masculinity, I think, is actually very toxic, because it seems like it can only exist. Masculinity can only exist if it is dominating something else. It's why I feel like seeing pictures of Mormon leaders with their wives can feel so chilling, because part of the masculine aesthetic is having the smiling wife with the smiling children and the father standing over them. And that to be truly masculine is to have the wife and the children falling in line underneath your power. I think another...
Yep. Well, you gotta get something to make you feel better as you lick the religious boot of anybody that claims to be of God, even if they're a literal Satan spawn like Trump who pretends to be Jesus. So
another example of this is a Mormon nationalist movement called DesNat. To read from this this article in The Guardian, it says, some who identify as Desnats, which is a ridiculous name, I have to say, take extreme right positions on gender, sexuality, and race. Others describing themselves as Deseret nationalists have advocated for a Mormon-ruled, separatist, white ethno-state located in the Great Basin area, briefly claimed by the LDS Church in the mid-19th century. And I'll say here that the Deseret News has a series of articles seemingly coming out against the Deseret nationalist movement. I think that Desnat is more extreme than even Nick Shirley, or probably even than Kai Schwemmer, though for him, I feel like he's tweeted some crazy things, so maybe he would still fall in line with that. It's hard to say exactly. One interesting thing about Desnat is that they actually harass other Mormons. And so it's not even just that they are saying it's Mormons against the world. It's this ideology, the Desnat ideology, I can hardly say that with a straight face, coming out against other Mormons to say, hey, you are not conservative or traditional enough. Now, the final thing on my list was the justification.
Sounds like a pretty toxic exclusivity club, huh?
Of God. Because not only do we have everything I just listed about conservatism, missionary mindedness, masculinity, patriarchy, we additionally have the idea that all of the things on the list are ordained and justified by God. The religious basis of all of this is the idea that God is behind them, which means that their work and their movement is unquestionable and unstoppable. Mormons believe that their church is the true church and that all other churches are false. And when I was growing up, we would quote that they draw near to me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And I know that it's part of every religion that like, oh, we are right. But I think the level to which Mormons go to say that we are truly Jesus Christ Church, and the pride that comes from that and the drive that comes from that is pretty singular. What's more is that Mormon youth grow up being told that they have been saved in the pre-earth life to come down in this specific time, in this specific generation, to make a difference and to save the world. And I think this is maybe the most terrifying point of them all, because it really says that not only are all of these things good, not only are all of these things like worthwhile, everything I've discussed in this video, it is that they are ordained of God. I think the belief that you're being led by the hand of God means that you're not really going to question or think through the things you're choosing to do. Whether you are
yeah, it also makes you feel really good. Imagine like you look. Imagine you were told by a higher power that you were really special. And I think that there's a little bit of an irony in that entire situation. Is that like a lot of people, like you'll see LGBTQ people go around and they'll say like, oh, you know, hey, we're special for being gay. And then you have like religious conservatives who will sit here and they'll be like, no, stop. You just want a participation trophy, when all these very religious men literally just think that because they're a man, they are better than women. Like that is a participation trophy. So I think it's something interesting to keep in mind. I fell twice. God damn it.
a Glenn Beck, a Nick Shirley, Ezra Taft Benson, whoever, if you truly think that you are being led by God, it means you're going to, I think, be more extreme. I think it means you're going to be more sure of yourself, less likely to hear criticism. You probably hear criticism as, oh, they don't like what I'm doing because they're evil.
Probably. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense to me, actually. That would make perfect sense.
Not because maybe they're right. I'll put to the side here, these are different quotes from different Mormon leaders. We have Nelson.
It makes sense. I mean, a lot of the religious individuals who are very popular, they are incredibly fucking stupid, but they don't see themselves as stupid. They see themselves as like right and some kind of arbiter of intelligence and freedom when they're obviously not. So, you know, it's that even when they're all very dumb, it probably does make them feel really good. So, I mean, I guess there's a I guess there's kind of like a benefit. It's like ignorance is bliss type of a thing. Confidence is key. They just kind of go around being like, no, I'm right, and then that in their world they just become right. That's it, and they find other like-minded individuals. So you guys be more confident. That's what's killing you. Be more confident. Be as confident as Nick Shirley. These guys has a literal intellectual disability and is wrong about everything. And yet, holy fuck, bazookas.
Monson, Hinckley, Elder Madsen, quoting Joseph F. Smith and Spencer W. Kimball. I will just read one of these quotes, but they all say basically the same thing. He says, I make a plea and offer a challenge. Ye are a chosen generation. How very true that is. Notwithstanding all the problems that we have, this, I believe, is the greatest age in the history of the world, and you young people of this generation are part of it. You are the beneficiaries of it. Its fruits are here to bless your lives if you will grasp them and live worthy of them. And
did that Kai guy actually react to the Mormon to the bricks and minifigure situation? Did he defend the Mormons doing all the fucking crazy shit?
I remember when I was a Mormon teenager, I remember I got a little handout that had one of these types of quotes. Like I said, there are a lot of them throughout many generations, which is why it's so funny. And I remember on my quote, it was like, you are the greatest generation, something similar to this. But mine had, and I remember thinking like, wow, I'm taking this literally, right? Like God literally saved me in the pre-earth life as a spirit, and he sent my soul to this body right now because God needs me in his army to accomplish his great work. And I remember being very like, wow, I must be really special. And then I looked and it had like the person's name, and then I saw that the quote was from 1970. And I remember thinking like, well, when he said this, he wasn't speaking to my generation. He was speaking to people born in the 70s, people who were teenagers in the 70s. And I remember suddenly kind of feeling like, well, if this wasn't meant...
Sounds a little bit like a cult speak to me, huh?
For me, maybe
he was actually against them so that they were making the Mormon community look bad. Wow. Can't believe like the racist white supremacist guy is saying that the Mormon community is making... that the bricks and minifigs is making the Mormon community look bad. That's fucking interesting.
I'm not chosen, and maybe I'm not that special. Okay, I think I found it. So it is the Joseph F. Smith quote. This is from 1970. He says, our young people are the nobility of heaven. Imagine reading this as like a 15-year-old and you're like, I'm nobility. A choice and chosen generation who have a divine destiny. Their spirits have been reserved to come forth in this day when the gospel is on the earth and when the Lord needs valiant servants to carry on his great latter-day work. And so imagine you are a young Mormon man believing that you are nobility, that your spirit has been reserved, that the Constitution is divinely appointed, that you're in God's true, most American religion, and that you've been called forward to protect America from falling into moral decline. I mean, even in this chosen generation talk from President Hinckley, he gives all these stats about the moral decline of this generation. For example, he talks about teen pregnancy. Teen pregnancy has risen 621% since 1940.
Isn't there like the goal from a lot of these religious conservatives is letting teenagers get pregnant? So I don't think they have an issue with the teenage pregnancy. I think they have an issue with them not being married, right?
More than 1 million teenage girls get pregnant each year. He highlights every year substance abuse claims younger victims with harder drugs. 1/3 of high school seniors get drunk once a week. He
That sounds pretty cool, dude.
Goes on to quote, I guess he's quoting this study, that the health and well-being of America's youth are not primarily rooted in illness or economics. Unlike the past, the problem is not childhood disease or unsanitary slums. The basic cause...
I love this because it's always old people who are doing like dumbass shit when they were kids. You know, like, yeah, I was smoking cigarettes at 14. It's like, and then they fucking morally masturbate to like their fucking, to like the younger generations about how bad they were. But they were like truly the fucking worst. The
cause of suffering is profoundly self-destructive behavior, drinking, drugs, violence, promiscuity, a crisis of behavior and belief, a crisis of character. And so I feel like this idea of American Mormon youth having this idea that they live higher standards, that they don't suffer from a crisis of character. Though honestly, looking at a lot of the statements from these far-right Mormon influencers, I would argue they are definitely suffering from a crisis of character. I think that this just illustrates this idea that it is American exceptionalism. It is this idea that we are better than you. We have better scripture. We have better morals. We have higher standards. And all of this means that you all should start acting like us. We need to make it illegal to have premarital sex. Because if we don't have that, we are no longer a great nation. We are no longer the great state of Utah. We've lost our mojo. Meanwhile, we have Nick Shirley trying to bust open the doors of a daycare, and we have Mormon members on Facebook getting up.
Well, like we said, pedophilia type stuff isn't really a red flag to a lot of these people as of right now. So, you know.
That there's even a single person highlighted where the woman is the breadwinner. I do think in all of this, one of the scariest elements is the idea, like I said, the justification of God, that the indignation is righteous indignation, that the morals are not just opinions, but facts. I mean, all of this is converging to create this product. You know, this is the system, and we have this product of the far-right Mormon male influencer who is getting retweeted by the Vice President of the United States. And even
Yep. I mean, you have people like rapists like Tectone getting retweeted by Elon Musk, so very clearly there's something very interesting going on. When it comes to just being completely morally abhorrent and getting a retweet from some of the most powerful people in the country right now.
Specifically that the moral degradation of America, which is kind of fabricated here, that the moral degradation of America is meant to be specifically solved by Mormonism. There's this early quote. This is actually a quote.
What's funny is a lot of these religious groups are really just being used anyway by other like groups. Like, do you really think that like, do you really think that fucking JD Vance cares that much about fucking Mormonism? No, he doesn't give a fuck. He has like a brown wife, which is funny because I feel like once Trump is out, hopefully he actually fucking is out and he doesn't just try to pull some bullshit. Like, I don't think Vance will ever have a chance because he's already pretty much brought up like an entire white supremacist. Like they've jerked off an entire white supremacist group of people. Like, there's absolutely no fucking way that Vance is going to be able to get in there with a brown wife. There's just no fucking way.
Quote from Joseph Smith himself, where he said that the Constitution at some point would hang by a thread, that basically it would be the Mormon Church, the members of the Mormon Church, who would save the country when the Constitution hangs by a thread. And it's not even just Joseph Smith that said it. We also have quotes from this article is very interesting. It kind of combines all of the different statements. Brigham Young said the Constitution will hang upon a single thread. Then they will have to call for the Mormon elders to save it from utter destruction, and they will step
udders, cows,
forth and do it. We also have similar quotes from John Taylor, Joseph Fielding Smith, of course, Ezra Taft Benson, Harold B. Lee. And so because Joseph Smith, I assume, because he taught that about Mormons saving the entire country, then we have all these other Mormon leaders coming.
It's crazy that like just some people wrote this book, because like even there may be a God, but there's like thousands of different religions. So you know even if there is a universally like accepted that there is a God, there's so many different expressions of it that obviously people made up these books. And then in these books, all the people are like, no, we're the chosen ones. we have the most DEI ever. We have the most DEI brain ever, you know? And then they criticize other people. It's fucking interesting.
Along to say, like, yes, there will come a time prophesied that the Constitution will hang by a thread, the country will be about to fall into ruin, and they will need those high standards, squeaky white Mormon boys to come along and save us all. It honestly feels like a Mormon version of National Treasure when he's like, I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence. And I did honestly grow up watching that movie like constantly. My family loved that movie, so.
That's interesting.
I think that this...
I've never seen it. I'm assuming it's a conspiracy theory movie, no?
It's all within the same general idea, which is like, America is under threat, and only the Mormons can save it.
Nice. We'd love to see it, dude.
You take all of these things and honestly,
And they're going to need to team up with the pedophiles to fucking change the world.
feel free to comment and add to the list, because this is just what I came up with as the kind of high level overview of points. You take all of these things, which are all the parts of the system, and then when you send a young man through that system, he pops out as the product, which we see in any number of these men that I've been highlighting. All of these right-leaning Mormon commentators and influencers and authors who really have just taken religion and put it into the field of politics. I am very interested to see what happens as time progresses, as men and women become more separate by ideology.
Yeah, I mean maps. Yeah, true. Well, I gotta be respectful to our president. I gotta call him a map. I can't just say that he's a pedophile. That's not the acceptable term. He's a map.
And by politics. And I'll say I also think that each side of the coin, whether it's like the conservative Mormon man influencer and the conservative Mormon woman influencer, one of which is like ballerina farm, baking sourdough, having a bunch of children. The other side of that coin, which is like going.
You keep saying pedophilia isn't important to these people, but remember less than 8 years ago when Joe Biden was in office and Pizzagate was happening, they cared. That wasn't when it wasn't done. Pizzagate's not real, just to be clear. Just number one. Number two, pedophilia has never mattered to any of these like very religious individuals. These are people who want to roll back the age of consent to like 15. Whenever they think children are sexy enough, that's what their argument would be. Well, they're mature enough. She's mature enough. She started her period and she's developing. Right? This never mattered. Like, the Pizzagate was fake. It's not a real thing. Conservatives, unfortunately, don't care about pedophilia ever at all. They don't give a singular fuck about it. So I think that's something important to keep in mind.
And knocking down doors and investigating fraud and getting appointed to X, Y, and Z position. I think that seeing these two paths that men and women take in the internet is...
Oh, okay. Gotcha. We agree. Okay.
Both scary and fascinating to observe all at the same time. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you appreciated my analysis or found it insightful. If you haven't already, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'll also link a ton of stuff below if you want to keep doing more research. And
how is a global cabal of elite pedos fake? I don't know. What the fucking Pizzagate? Wasn't Pizzagate that there was like fucking Hillary Clinton and lizard people were in the basement of a fucking pizza restaurant? That's fake. Pizzagate is fake. Like, I feel like, I think I saw something where it might even been fucking Ghislaine Maxwell, but they would pump a bunch of conspiracy theories onto the internet, but like 5% of it was real. So like, hey, there are pedophiles, but then there's also lizard people, and there's this and this, and this way you would start to like write off the global pedophile cabal off with everything else. But like, that's what Pizzagate is, right? Like, obviously there's a pedophile community. Trump is part of it, right? Epstein is part of it. It's like, yeah, but isn't Pizzagate like, oh, it's in the basement of a fucking like Italian pizzeria or something? Like, that's ridiculous.
Into some of the articles or data or different figures that I highlighted. I do have a separate Patreon video where I went into when Charlie Kirk was shot and my reaction to it. It's already posted on Patreon if you want to check that out. Also, as I said, it is always really interesting for me to hear stories of people being raised in one system and then jumping ship into a new system or a new way of thinking, whether it's political from one group to another, whether it's religious from one group to leaving that group or even joining another group. I just find these like moments of transformation very interesting. So if you have a story like that, feel free to comment below. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I will see you all next week.
All right. Cool beans, man. Cool beans. Good video.